is my pleasure to call to order the Thursday, September 7th, 2017 special meeting of the 36th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Here.
Councilmember Gravlin.
Here.
Councilmember Kadeckel.
Here.
Councilmember Stedman.
Here.
Councilmember Cherbrack.
Here.
And Mayor O'Dwyer.
Thank you. The first order of business here is to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. Support.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Kadeckel with support by Councilman Blanchard. Changes or additions? All right, hearing none. Ms. Boucher, please call the roll.
Blanchard.
Yes.
Gravlin.
Yes.
Kadeckel.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Cherbrack.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes. I see that Chaplain Jim Smith is here with us this evening. Please rise as you are able and join us for an invocation.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we're thankful that you're a loving but a holy God, and we know that no authority has been established but by and through you. And Lord, we're thankful that we're able to gather here tonight. And Lord, we just invite you to be at this meeting. And Lord, through this meeting, we are seeking unity. And Lord, we pray especially tonight for those that are in harm's way, the people that have gone through in Texas, the people that are going to go through in Florida, and then those that are suffering the fires in the West. Lord, we just pray for your protection and safety for them. We also pray, Lord, for the people that are in the military and our police and fire, that you would watch over and protect them. Lord, I thank you for listening. I pray that you would bless this meeting tonight, bless Berkeley, bless Michigan, and bless the United States of America. And in your Son's name, the name of Jesus, our Lord and Savior, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And please remain standing as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is to my right, your left, right over here. Okay? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So far, I think it's pretty good. Well, thank you again all for coming to this special City Council meeting. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to provide you with information and to answer questions related to the recent flooding event that affected roughly 700 households throughout the city. We chose Berkeley High School for this special meeting to provide seating for as many residents as possible. We'd like to thank the Berkeley School District and especially the staff at Berkeley High School for allowing us to be here tonight. And the next regular City Council meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 18th, and it will be held at City Hall. And because this is not a typical environment and a typical meeting, the flow will be somewhat different. For example, this meeting is being streamed online. And for those of you that are here and want additional information on that, it's being streamed at our website, berkleymich.org. Unfortunately, there is no direct feed from this facility to our cable channel, so it will not be broadcast live on WBRK. But the meeting is being recorded and will be aired on that station, and will also be available on demand on our city's YouTube channel. When you arrived tonight, you should have received or had an opportunity to grab a Q&A document and a form to put your questions on. The Q&A is meant to provide answers to a number of the questions that we had received prior to tonight's event, and the little blue slip is meant to capture additional questions as the conversation continues throughout the night. There will be folks collecting these questions. As you fill them out, please just raise your hand and pass them to the aisles, and then our folks will grab them and compile them with the rest. Okay, let's see. Now what we'll do next is citizens' comments related to items not pertaining to the storm and the flooding event. There may be other items or issues that we'd like to make the residents aware of, and so we'll use this opportunity to make those comments. Please note that we'll have a second opportunity for comments related to the flood and the storm event during and after the presentation that you'll hear in just a few moments. So with that, if you do have a comment not related to the flood or the rain, please feel free to come up to the microphone up front. And as always, if your concern needs to be addressed by a member of city staff or a department of the city, please sign your name on the sheet that our deputy city manager has. Darcelle's up front. Hi, Darcelle. We will not engage you in discussion in this portion. And when a speaker is finished, please refrain from gestures and approvals or disapproval, because that could be deemed intimidating to other residents. And when you do come to the microphone, please state your name and city of residence. Okay. Well, we know the drill, so that's good. So we'll be ready for the next round here in a few minutes. Thank you. So what we have next is an opportunity for members of council, if they wanted to share any initial remarks before we hear the presentation. Then we'll hear the presentation, and then we'll have additional opportunities for your questions and to address the materials that you provide on the blue slips. So with that, I'd like to open it up if there's any council members that'd like to add some comments or remarks before we begin. See Councilmember Kadekel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I want to thank you for your correspondence through email and phone calls throughout the last week, or last couple weeks. I'm very interested to see the presentation myself tonight. Your concerns are very important to us, and as you can see by the crowd here tonight, your concerns will be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sherbrack.
Thank you. Anybody hear me? No? Just me? Good? Okay. I see a lot of familiar faces out here right now. Some of you that I know were extremely adversely impacted by the event a little over a week ago. Others of you that weren't necessarily personally impacted, but know folks in the city that were. As was mentioned earlier, about 10 to 12% of our residents experienced extremely damaging, basement flooding. And, we experienced something similar a few years ago. But the difference between 2014 and 2017 for me is that 2014 was a widespread regional storm. That was something a little different. 2017 seems to have, for whatever reason, only impacted Berkley in terms of backups. Yes, other communities had flooding, but not the backups that we had in our basements here. So for me, my response is the same as it is when I try to process anything, any decision that I have to make up here as a council member. Why did it happen? Why did it happen there? What caused it? Because some things, or a combination of things, caused it to happen. And I want to know what those were, because the only thing that we can do now is take steps to safeguard those kinds of consequences in the future. And how can we help those that are dealing with the situation right now? So I'm looking forward to having those questions answered tonight. I'm looking forward to hearing the experts here and their opinions, their views on why it happened, and more importantly, on what potential steps that we can take in the future so that it doesn't happen adversely to Berkley again. Now, look, we can't control the weather. I understand that. We're going to get rain, we're going to get storms, we're going to lose power from time to time. But I don't like to see things happening in a pattern and then allowing them to continue to happen. I look forward to hearing from the residents today, and hearing what they have to say, because the only way that we're going to be able to come to any kind of conclusion as a community is to listen to everybody, listen to any ideas, take all those ideas, consider them, figure out what we can feasibly do. There are some things that you can't just wave a magic wand over and change, but we need to thoughtfully consider those and decide what courses of action that we're going to take. And to me, that's the most important part of this meeting. So I also want to thank everybody for coming here today. I look forward to the conversation. I know a lot of you are upset, frustrated, just like we are. People up here had the same things happen in their basements, so we understand the problem, and we are committed to fixing it.
Thank you. Any others?
I think Dan's covered everything. So,
Great.
thank you.
Okay. I had just a few words from our Mayor O'Dwyer. Dr. Phil O'Dwyer is out of the state, actually. His son recently got married, and he's wrapping up those ceremonies and festivities, and he sends both his regrets and his support. And from the city's e-newsletter that came out last week, he wrote, August 2017 ends with the misery of floods. As we empathized with the people of Texas, Berkley was hit with a flash flood and many basements were damaged. As I watched the water and sewer bubble up in my basement, I had a sinking feeling. Thankfully, this is not as bad as Texas, but frustrated at the frequency of these weather events in recent years. Our public safety and public works departments are available to offer assistance as we work through this difficult time. And please be safe and follow the city's website and Facebook and so on. And for my piece, I'd just like to add that this was a terrible incident. And I too am I can't really say pleased that we're all here tonight, obviously, but I'm heartened to know that we're here together. Our homes should be places of comfort and peace. Our city should be a source of pride and confidence. And instead, this is what we're working on at the moment, but we're here. Back in 2014, like many of you, I had 2.5 feet of water, sewer in our basement. This most recent event, far less dramatic, only 6 inches of sewer in our basement. So as was mentioned, this is clearly something that I'm here with us to work on as a community to see what we can do. So the way I asked to organize this tonight was to organize the material that you're about to see, and we're going to hand it over to the people who actually have some good stuff for us here. 3 pieces. What happened and why? What have we done since 2014? And what more can we do going forward? At the resident level, at the city level, and at the regional level, for both immediate actions and also long-term plans. And so as you hear the material that will be presented, and this is my cue to you guys that it's coming your way, please listen to what's being said, think it through, use more of these blue sheets if you have additional questions that you'd like to capture in the moment. Feel free to raise them up, and our folks here, Darshell and Chelsea, will grab them. And then we'll have an opportunity for the microphone for any comments and questions that are not already covered in the presentation. Okay? All right, so with that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to our city manager, Matt Baumgarten. Matt, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Like many of the council members, I do want to start off with saying thanks, and I'll have you guys kind of grab the mic and kind of get queued up here. So I don't like to sit and make presentations, so I apologize for my style. I would like to say the same thing, and I sound really loud up here, so hopefully I'm not overpowering anybody there. But I do want to likewise say thank you to the residents of Berkley, not just those guys that are here now, but in the last 10 days, the outpouring, the questions, people that have been supportive of our staff as we have tried to initiate a response to this terrible event. I would like to thank the City Council as well. I really appreciate the chance to check in, not just with you guys, but also with the residents, let you know what we found out in the past 10 days. Likewise, I need to say we don't have all the answers yet, but I'm going to present a very frank and upfront discussion on what we know, what we don't know, and what we will absolutely find out for not only this council, but for the residents as well. And then, of course, Berkley School District for opening their doors. This is not something we're normally able to do, but they truly are a community school. They saw the community in need, and they answered the call. So if anybody from Berkley School District who's here, I'm happy to be standing in this room. but I wish it was literally any other reason why. Okay, so moving into some of the common questions that we all had, whether it was a resident, whether it was staff, whether it was members of council, we all had some very, very astute questions. And like I said, this is a check-in. I think we've got a lot of the questions answered. We've at least got a lot of the resident questions that have been submitted, I believe, answered for you. But resident questions, really, we saw some recurring themes of what people wanted to know. So we've listed them up here. What caused it? Did we not learn anything from 2014? Why are we in this situation again? Why was this not fixed once and for all in the last 3 years? Why are some homes flooded in one area and others aren't? And probably most importantly, and where we'll end tonight as far as the staff presentation, is what are we going to do? So some of the more specific questions you'll see up here, I do want to please keep the very specific questions coming. In addition to this, I've got another whole page of questions that we're working through to try to find out for people. But are new builds the problem? Would backflow preventers? I saw Ms. Kempner here earlier. She asked some great questions about backflow preventers, and is all in all, is it a good idea to get them? Are there some risks? I had I don't know if, I didn't see everybody walk in, but questions about how do we know what's going on in our system? What visibility do we have? Have we spoken to other cities? Do we take a regional approach to how we do our operations and maintenance and how we impact other systems and other communities? And then this one I got a lot actually, and we've got some other people here to answer it, but what does I-696? It flooded about 3 feet of water there for a while. When it floods, what does that mean for local communities? What does that mean for the regional system? So, great questions so far. We've tried to incorporate as many of these into the presentation you have tonight, into the FAQ that we were handing out this evening. But absolutely, please keep them coming, because the only way that we can get to a place where everyone has a good understanding of what our system can and reasonably can't do is through a question and answer process. So onward we go. So obviously, August 28th was a rainstorm, and that's really what started all of this. So the first place that we go after a rainstorm is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and I think they named themselves that just to get to the acronym NOAA. But we go to NOAA first and look at some of the storm data and say, okay, what exactly happened here? As you probably have guessed by now, the blue dot there, right here, is, I searched what happened on Berkley August 28th. That's what popped up. Zooming in, well, let's stop to address this here. I've got a lot of questions about why this didn't happen in the other surrounding communities, and you'll see in a moment how centered this ended up being over just our community alone. Obviously, you see some spots in Beverly Hills and Southfield and Birmingham. This wasn't just a Berkeley-shaped storm, but we were the only city that is completely eclipsed by the storm system. NOAA, what they do is they look at the way a storm behaves and look at what the likely rainfall was to drop it based on the way it happened. They put us at 3 inches of rain. So this area down to their smallest pixel, they'd say the storm behaved in such a way that should have dropped 3 inches of rain. So next up we go to some of the rain gauges in the area. NOAA said 3. I've got Weather Underground's a great resource for weather information. They've got 2 weather stations in here that said it was less than, between 1.5 inches and almost 2. We've got some residents who have submitted to us their rain gauge information that said we've got, in 2 spots in the city, that said we got closer to 5 based on their calculations. I will say a lot of this information leaves us with questions. How much rain do we actually get? I'm greatly appreciative of anybody who keeps rain gauges. In fact, if you have them, if you haven't dumped them out, if you've got some good information on what happened that night, I would love to hear from it. But something I think the city, one of the recommendations we'll make in a little bit is actually the city install a couple of rain gauges throughout the city so we can have more accurate information. We don't have to rely on the resident gauges to get a more widespread picture of how much rain comes. So we don't have a down to the inch accounting of how much water we got. I've got 3 sources, all that gave us very different information. But we think it was too much rain at a too quick of a pace, and you'll see that as we go through this. Because of this rain event, we ended up with just over 700 houses, or 10% of our community. We've been collecting this data. If you haven't turned anything into us yet, please do. We'll continue to do so. This is based on a couple of different sources. This is people that have called us, people that have reported to us through email, and then also our DPW was out right away collecting trash from curbs. And they were, anything that looked like it may have been basement damage, water damage, they were noting that as well. So 3, we think, very good sources went into developing this. I don't think it's comprehensive. There's probably some people that just have not had an avenue for reporting yet, but it does paint a picture as to where we saw these issues. So we see a lot of instances here, and then we see sort of an oval or a rectangular problems here. So those were our 2 big areas, and I had a rain gauge over in Buckingham area. That was the one I pictured that showed 5 inches. A couple blocks away, I've got a weather station that says they only got less than 2. So again, we think this was a very isolated, intense storm that blew through. The odd part here is that for those that recall the discussions after 2014, our system flows kind of this way. So from an elevation standpoint, things at the top head towards a common point here, and then they leave the community through that. So this we would say is our low grade. It is odd, is the best way we can describe it right now. Again, not having all the answers for you yet. It is very odd that this area experienced next to nothing. This area is not the spot that we would have gone to say, all right, if we're gonna have a problem, we're gonna have it here, we should start building in more capacity to this area. So this is what we'll get to in a little bit. This is part of the maddening thing about trying to predict where improvements need to go. But as of right now, this is our best accounting of where we had the most issues. Likewise, we also ended up with a power outage, which is, people that have water in their basement are trying to get it out, trying to get things clean, and the lights go down. Oh man. So DT, we contacted DT, we've reached out to them, we've been pushing them to get us a plan. They've issued a statement. We're gonna have this on the website, so don't feel like you have to speed read through it. But they have supplied a statement on the 29th when they had to bring down parts of their grid to make some repairs to some transformers. So we'll have this on our website for anybody who's interested in getting into the details of the statement. So again, why did this happen? And I don't have the exact answer for you yet, but the way that the system behaved, the most likely cause, the most plausible cause that we have right now is we had too much rain and it came into us way too fast. And that's why we saw the system rise up. So what happens here is in a combined sewer system, everything leads to a single pipe. That level rises, and anything at that level begins to start to equalize. So as soon as you get above the level of the floor of the basement, your floor drains, your toilets, everything, they start to try to catch up. And until the system tries to seek balance, and this is what we saw in over 700 homes. I literally get a knot in my stomach when I even see that number or talk about this. It was more than we were able to handle. It was more than we were designed to take in amount of time. So again, I can't tell you with certainty yet, but this is our most likely, most plausible explanation for this right now. So how does our system work? We've got our DPW director, who I hope is not fled, there he goes. Our DPW director and our engineers, who can talk about this system and who are thankfully far more knowledgeable than me about how it works. So we're gonna go through a little bit of why our system works, because I want you to see why we've come to the belief that this is the most plausible explanation. And we'll get into some of the other questions and theories that we've had so far, but do want to turn it over to Derek so he can talk about the way the system is constructed.
Thank you, Matt, and I'll be working on There we go. Thank you, Matt. And I'll be working with Roland, Alex here from Hubble, Roth, and Clark as well, assisting me in going through some of these slides. We do have a combined system, and again, this depiction here shows how that's generally laid out with the catch basins leading to a combined sewer. That also includes the sanitary lead from the home. So both storm and sanitary waste are combined into that single pipe in the roadway. We have a full gravity system in Berkley, 100% gravity fed, no pumps, no switches, no control. Gravity operates our system. And it's essentially 3 different phases. You've got the street collection, the Berkley pipes, and then our pipes drain into the Water Resource Commissioner's lines, the Oakland County lines. And we'll get into that a little bit later too to show how those are laid out.
Just for the record, I'm Roland Alex with Hubble, Roth, and Clark. Matt, if you could go back a couple slides. So we definitely didn't want to breeze past this. This is obviously a very important topic and one that we have done some research on, and we need to do additional research to understand exactly why this happened. At the end of the day, we do feel that there was a rain event that was greater than what the current system could handle. But I want to take a second to maybe dispel some of, not the rumors, but some thoughts that people have had as to additional reasons why this may have happened. I think the county is here, and they'll discuss this a little bit later, but as Derek had mentioned, your system and the regional system functions on gravity. There's not a magic gate that is open and closed at the city or the county's will. We don't have to wait for a pump to start to ramp up and start pumping to dewater the county system. It truly is a gravity system, and there is no gate that is closed until an event reaches a certain size. So I wanted to kind of dispel that. And I also wanted to mention that a poorly maintained system could cause some backup problems. If you don't clean your sewers, if you don't televise them, if you don't replace damaged sewers, that could lead to backups and flooding. And I have been involved for the last 4 years with Derek and his staff, and can attest that they've done a great job maintaining their sewers. They televise their complete system, over 50 miles of sewer every 2 years. They have an active lining program, which we'll discuss a little bit later. So from our opinion, it wasn't a maintenance or an operations failure. So again, that leads to the thought that it was an event that was larger than what the capacity of both the city and possibly the county system could handle. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more, and I know we'll have some additional questions that we'll probably field later on. Next slide. So obviously these are actual pictures from the event. And again, I'll circle back. I got thrown a little bit later. I do want to say that I understand how disappointing this is for everybody. As a registered professional engineer, it is our duty, my company's duty, to protect the residents, to provide clean drinking water, to take your sanitary sewers away. So we understand how difficult and disappointing this is for everybody. So this is a fairly common occurrence. The streets flooding, maybe not to this level, but the system is designed with restricted covers. Matt, the next photo is a picture of that. So what these do is they slow the amount of water that enters the combined storm and sanitary sewer system. What that causes is the backup in the streets, as everybody saw. So what that is doing is it's actually using the street, using the right-of-way as an area to detain and hold this water while it's slowly introduced into the system. The simple thought that you could think about is you'd rather see water in your streets than water in your basements. Obviously, you had both of those this event, but there are many other events over the last years that the streets have functioned as a detention area for that water and have alleviated possible flooding situations that could have happened. I think we can go on to the next slide. So this goes back to what Derek was describing. This is your city. North is up, and the dark lines are combined sewers that are operated by the county, the Water Resource Commission. And then they're a little hard to see, but they're yellow or orange lines. Those are the sewers that are operated by the city. In general, the system flows from the top left, which would be the northwest, to the bottom right, which would be the southeast, and then flows through the downstream communities, eventually getting to the GWK retention facility holding area that's further downstream. Now I think we'd ask the county to come up and discuss kind of the regional system.
Yeah, so just while Commissioner Nash is getting ready, Jim Nash, for those of you that don't know, is our Water Resource Commissioner. He is the head of the county's Water Resource Department. He was nice enough to come and kind of tell us a little bit about where our water goes eventually, not only in our city where we dump into, but also where it goes from there, and how regional impacts can affect Berkley's system. So thank you, Commissioner Nash, for being here.
Well, I'm glad to come. We're always here. Whenever there's questions, issues that you need answered, never hesitate to call me. We're always willing to come and talk to the communities. As you mentioned, the GWK is a very regional system. It's 14 communities that all contribute flow to this. So it's what's called a Chapter 20 drain. It has a board that oversees it, and it's a regional operation for all the communities that are involved. So we have a lot of input from you guys on a lot of the things we do. Over the years, we've had committees that have overseen the operations and the construction of the facility. So we've always been very interested in as much input from the communities as we can get. So I brought with me Gary Nigro, who is in charge of the GWK facility. He's going to talk about the facility and what we do and around this storm here. So, Gary, go ahead.
Well, good evening. Just had a couple slides put together to add to your presentation that Matt already put together for this meeting. And I really kind of wanted to give people an idea of how the entire drainage district and how the whole system in southeast Oakland County and southeast Michigan works. So this first slide up here is really depicting, I got a blare here. Oh, it's going to work on me. Uh-oh. This right here is the edge of Oakland County. It's Macomb County over here. So this right here, this line right here is the actual drainage district for the George W. Kuhn Retention Treatment Facility. The green here, this watershed, this is the entire Clinton River watershed. This whole thing shaded green. I like to point that out to people because a lot of times people ask us, the county or other municipalities, why we choose to send the water the directions we do, why the pipe are designed to flow certain directions, why couldn't you take it and put it a different direction. So it really comes down to the natural topography of the land. So 300, 400 years ago, before this whole area was settled at all, this drainage district boundary there, you see the green is, like I said, the Clinton River. The pink is the Rouge River watershed. A drop of water falls in Berkley. It eventually makes its way the same direction that our pipe are in the ground, because all we do is we just follow the natural topography of the land when we build all these big combined drains. So, any water that falls in this area is eventually going to make it all the way through the facility here. This is the George W. Kuhn Retention Treatment Facility. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Down the Red Run Drain, all the way up to where it meets with the Clinton River right here, all the way out to Lake St. Clair. And then, okay, next slide, please. I threw this one in there just to show the actual cities. I know Mr. Nash just mentioned 14 communities that contribute to this region. Berkley being, right here, right in the west side of it. Go ahead, next slide. This one is a little tighter view of that same area with the county's combined drain system overlaid on the map. So you can see kind of this green one right here, this green rhombus, if I got that right, is Berkley. And you can see the series of drains that run through it. And again, I did the same thing they did and chose yellow for this map, so it's a little hard to see, I apologize. So some of the old county drains that come through here are part of the original Berkley branch of the Royal Oak Drain. So they flow from west to east and then kind of make a jog up here along Vincetta and down 12 Mile all the way to 12 Mile and Stevenson Highway, which is the start of the facility. And again, following the natural topography of the land. Back in early 60s, 61 to 64 is when the county built the 12 Towns relief drain system. So in your case, this blue one right here is the middle section, that flows this direction up to the same point. That's the 12 Towns Relief Drain middle. And as you can see, it passes right through the middle of Berkley and kind of has some legs that extend up and pick up flow. It is a very large pipe. I think as it's leaving Berkley, it's about a 132-inch diameter pipe. And it has a fairly steep slope on it too, so it can convey a lot of flow very quickly. I was going to talk a little bit about the history of it too, I guess. So back in the 1920s, when these all original drains were built, these big ones, the yellow ones, it was the whole region, southeast Oakland County, was developing out like crazy, and houses were being built everywhere, and there were very frequent basement backups everywhere. It'd be a weekly or monthly thing. And so all these communities, banded together and said, we need to alleviate this, as well as the state health department said, we're not going to issue any more sanitary sewer extension permits. We're going to put a ban on all additional building beyond this point, and unless you guys can get this under control, these frequent backups. So the communities all rallied together and petitioned at the time, the Oakland County Drain Commissioner's Office to create the 12 Towns Relief Drain System, and that's what I described a moment ago. And those were constructed in the 1960s to relieve a lot of that frequent basement backups. So I know that my own mother grew up in the Royal Oak area, actually, and I asked her about it in the past. What was it like back then? That would have been the 40s and 50s. And she said we had a ping pong table in the basement, and we knew that every time it started raining very hard, we'd pick up everything off the basement floor and we put it up on the ping pong table, like every time it rained. And I was like, you kidding me? And she's like, well, that's just something we came to accept that was going to happen when it rained hard. So that's how bad it was previous to the 12 Towns Relief Drain System being constructed. As I mentioned, as these gentlemen mentioned, this is a combined system, which means that storm and sanitary sewage are combined in the same pipe. And all of that, like I mentioned, is flowing toward the open ditch red run drain, okay? So that was the purpose. So I mentioned the 12 Towns reliefs were built in the 60s. In the early 70s is when the DEQ said, you can't just let all that flow discharge to the red run drain anymore, because it's a combination of sanitary sewage and stormwater, and it goes right out to the lakes and rivers and streams. So that's when the design was developed for the retention treatment facility. It's located, it's about 2.1 miles long. It's located near I-75 and 12 Mile, all the way up to north of 13 Mile and DeQuinder right here. This is the county line. And what they did is they basically enclosed the entire red run drain for that 2.1 miles and built a large underground detention facility, which has a series of weirs in it, that walls, basically dams that capture the flow. So as you get a large rain event that's passing through the whole collection system, again, everything, every community, all coming to this point. When it gets to this area, it goes over the inlet weir into the facility, and we capture that flow for the actual 10-year design storm. What it does is for any smaller rain events, we can fully capture that combined sewage and make sure it does not go into the Red Run Drain and the Clinton River. After the rain event subsides, we have pumps that dewater the basin, that basin, and send it all down to Detroit for treatment at Detroit's wastewater treatment plant. What we also do is we screen and disinfect that flow, add sodium hypochlorite to the flow, which disinfects, kills all the bacteria in that flow, should the event be large enough that it's going to overtop the final effluent weir down at DeQuinder Road and spill into the Red Run Drain. So we do have an NPDES permit with the Department of Environmental Quality that we report all flows and discharges to the DEQ per our permit requirements, and have a facility has a very good track record for meeting clean water standards of the state. Just to reiterate, back in the day, the entire 12-town system all ended right here with combined sewage and flow flowing out of the system over the, at the time, effluent weir straight into the open ditch drains. So this facility right here is actually a pollution control facility. And as I think Matt and Derek mentioned a while ago, that it's a completely gravity-based system. So like as I mentioned, there's a series of weirs in there, but as the flow fills up in the system, it overtops one weir, fills up the next section of basin, overtops the next weir, fills up the next section of basin. So we compartmentalize the basin just for efficiency before it overtops the final weir at the Quinder. But by that point, like I said, it's treated, the flow is. Next slide, please. Whoops, okay. I was gonna say the other one was left in there.
You covered well.
Yeah, it's kind of the same.
Berkeley's place in the whole system.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, so. This right here, I wanted to throw in because this is a picture from 1962 from the construction of the 12 Towns drain, just to give some perspective. I know a lot of times people say, when we say we have drains underground that convey flow out of the area, it's hard for them to wrap their mind around the magnitude of some of these. These particular ones, I believe, are each about 14 feet wide, and there's 3 of them. So you're looking at about 45 feet by 12 or 13 feet high, I think. And if you look at what it takes to build something like this, I mean, this is Stevenson Highway. This is Stevenson Highway right here, and you're basically opened up from right-of-way line to right-of-way line, all the way across. So it's a rather significant piece of infrastructure. And this is just a couple of them, actually. This is the 12 Towns south and middle sections right here. So I think that's all I had to say right now about it.
Right. Either Gary or Jim, I would like to pause right here. One of the specific questions that we received from a couple of different residents is how the interstate flooding impacts the system. Can you speak a little bit to that? We saw 696 fill with a couple feet of water. Do you own that? Is that under your purview? Does that affect your system at all?
We do not own that. And 696 in particular actually has its own drain built all the way out into Lake St. Clair. So 696, MDOT owns the drainage, responsibility for 696. So unlike I-75, which there are areas of I-75 that are pumped up into the 12 Towns collection system and go into like these drains here, 696 actually does not. It does not come this direction that I just mentioned.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Before you go, I don't know if I'm on or not. You talked a little bit about, a lot about the weirs and how it gets over, and when it gets, to the end, we're at the end of the line. Could you go over the discharge scenario again? So you mentioned that when it gets full, it's got to go to Detroit treatment facility. When, I guess how much can it hold? When does it get full, and how often do you have to discharge?
Sure. The basin, including in-system storage, which would be these larger pipe here, can hold 124 million gallons of combined sewage. It's by far the largest facility like this in the state. Like as I mentioned, it's about 2.1 miles long. A normal rainstorm, I'd say the basin fills up or takes water in an average of about 35 times a year. So, and then it actually is a storm large enough to make it over the final effluent weir. Right now, for the last 10 years, we're averaging about 7 times a year. So about 7 times a year is when we can't fully capture a rain event. But then we always have, as I mentioned, once the rain event subsides and the discharge ends, that's when we use pumps to dewater the basin itself, because the basin is actually the lowest point around. So we did that on purpose for the design for settling and skimming. And if you make it the lowest point around, then you're also not affecting the hydraulics through the whole system if you're lower than what the ground wants to be anyway. So.
Councilman Blanchard.
So when there's no rain event, that facility is completely empty, completely dry?
That's correct. Yep.
So you can, at any rain event, you can capture the whole thing, you fill the whole thing up. Not partially, I mean, it's not partially full already, so that's good to know.
Right. We usually can do water the whole basin within a day or two after a rain event, as long as the system is low enough and we have the capacity in the sewers on the way down to Detroit. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very
So
much.
if there's any more questions, we're here.
Thank you so much. Transitioning back into a Berkeley-specific conversation, you can't help but compare this to 2014. I think it's just 3 years ago. It resonates so much in each of our minds. But there is a difference, and as you'll see, 2014 was a regional issue. We had everything from Wayne to Macomb. Everything in the Tri-County area was just completely saturated, 4 to 6 inches of water. We call it a 300 to 500 year storm. And if you're like me, you kept going, what is it? Stop telling me that. What does that even mean? Now, 2017, we believe as much as, remember, we don't have conclusive data for that yet, but we've got some anecdotal information that tells us we may have received as much as 4 to 5 inches in a less than a 2-hour period, but in a very intense storm cell that blew through. And so this was more of a Berkeley storm. This was not a regional storm. This was more of a Berkeley storm. And it appears to be, at least with the data we have so far, well over a 100-year storm. And editorializing a little bit in the parentheses there, like, what does that even mean? So I actually asked that question, and many of you have asked that same question, so we built that into the slide here. So I know Derek or Jim wanted to talk about this. Who wanted to? But
I can certainly touch on it. There's a misconception about a 100-year storm, and basically, it doesn't mean it happens once every 100 years, and that is something that has been going around as well. But it just has a 1% chance of happening in any 1 year. So 1% chance of happening in any 1 year, not just once every 100 years. So that's basically what this slide is depicting.
So we've got you're guaranteed to have at least one in 100 years, because you could go 100 years at 1% and it's going to happen. But there, even within the meteorological, the hydrologist community, much of my research have told me that they are trying to move away from using that terminology as well, because it lends itself to such a misconception. But they still do it, and that's the way they still rate it. The big question, I think, in many people's mind, and Steve, this is one of your big 3 questions, is, so what have we done since 2014? What did we learn? What did we change? What did we do differently? And thankfully, Derek is going to speak to that, because Derek and HRC have truly been on the front lines of this item.
And the new response policies that are listed up there, trash, the emergency operation plan manual, have all taken shape since that event. Our guys were out and about assisting with damage pickup, trash pickup immediately after the event, and then a few days after as well. So, and the longstanding tradition of preventative maintenance is an important one, and it's one that I want to focus on in some of the upcoming slides as well. We did receive a grant in 2013. It finished up in just this past May. That was a SAW grant that we invested $669,000 approximately. And we basically, this was a 90-10 split, so we received 90% state dollars for this SAW grant, which allowed us to build a GIS network. It paid for cammering and inspecting sewer lines. All kinds of things came under that grant.
One thing specific about that grant, people will see $700,000. They think, well, why couldn't you have put that to building larger sewers, building some of these other options that we might talk about a little bit later. The state stipulated that that was only for an evaluation of your system. So the only way you could have used those funds was the way the city did. So that money wasn't an option to use that to build new sewers.
Thank you, Roland. We have over 50 miles of pipe, and we do clean and inspect our combined sewers. We've gone through the entire cycle in the last 2 years. We've inspected and cleaned over 50 miles of pipe in the last 2 years. And I'm very proud of that number because that is a very high level of service, if you will. My experience has been other communities, and Roland and others can comment, that if they get through a line in 7 years, they're feeling pretty good. We get through our lines in 2 to 3 years, all of them, cleaning, televising. We're looking for any structural issues, anything that we want to put on the program for structural relining, any pipe replacements. It's all part of that process.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead. So expanding on this a little bit more, down at the bottom, those are actual images inside the pipe. So these are the videos that we take inside our 50 miles of pipe. And we televise these, we record these, we document these, and we rate these, and we look for defects. We look for things structurally that might be something that we want to pay attention to in the future. Do we need to do lining? Do we need to do a pipe replacement? In a nutshell, what we're trying to do is make sure that the efficiency of that pipe, 1930s, 40s, whenever it was built, is the most efficient that it can be. And the only way you can do that is being through the pipe and cleaning it and televising it on a regular interval. That's the only way you can ensure that that pipe is operating efficiently. And like I said, we're on a 2 to 3 year cycle for that citywide. You see the health of the pipes. There is a PACP rating system that we use for that measurement. Again, what we're looking for is anything unusual. We're looking for cracking. We're looking for structural things. We don't want to see a pipe collapse, so we do structural lining, as mentioned earlier. We're going to be doing pipe replacement as well. In fact, we're going to be bringing a section of pipe for replacement on Catalpa in the very near future. So these are all part of maintaining the integrity of that existing system.
Derek, let me ask a question that we've gotten a lot so far. There's some speculated that maybe rodents have infiltrated our sewer system, made a home there, created a blockage. Would this process have shown you that?
Absolutely.
Or would the cleaning process have removed anything like that?
Absolutely.
Did
They
you
would have.
see any indication like that?
I'm not aware of any of that, Sean, and my foreman's here, Sean Young. They would have been sent downstream in a very quick fashion as a part of this process.
On that slide, Derek? Thank you. For those, can you describe a little bit more about what we're seeing with those photos? Is this a before, after? Is this a good, bad, or are these just two
I don't think this is a before, after. This is just two different views inside of a pipe. So it just allows you to see, the lines that you see are the joints. You can see the joints as you move forward. It just gives you an indication of what it looks like inside the pipe. And these are pretty good looking pipes from my experience.
Nice, thank you.
So I've talked about structural relining, and I know we use that term quite a bit. Berkley has been doing this for over 20 years, long before many of us were here. They set the precedence with this structural relining, which is just an amazing accomplishment. When I came in here, I was really amazed to see this. And what it is essentially is basically putting a new pipe inside the old pipe. The old pipe is deteriorating. You may have structural concerns. You're able to, without open excavation, provide a new structural pipe inside of that old pipe. And what you see in the picture is an example of a before and after. And we've been doing this in Berkley for well over 20 years, which not many communities can say, very, very few. We have increased the annual budget for this. We're in the range of $250,000. It looks we're going up to $350,000. Which, just to put that in perspective, that allows us to do just over a mile of structural lining every year. 250 got me basically a mile worth of pipe, so 350 will give us a little bit more. As far as what that does for you, it adds, the lining manufacturer says it's a 100-year fix. So, we certainly like to say adds up to 100 years, but they stand behind it. This is structural. This means that the pipe around it, the old pipe, can fall apart, break away, and we will have a structural sound pipe. Again, trying to maintain that existing pipe.
Question here.
Do you want to explain a little bit about what the substance, the lining is made out of?
Sure.
Because it's not, you're not replacing it with the same thing that is there.
It's a resin, yep, it's a resin. It's essentially a plastic resin. It goes in, looks a lot like a fire hose, and they used hot water steam to basically cure it in place. It's a cured resin.
So, kind of going through some of my questions here, I had somebody say, you know, I haven't seen you guys dig up a single stick of pipe in years. This would be why, correct? Because we're able to do this without disturbing the right-of-way?
Yeah, I would view that as a compliment. We've got one coming up. We've got a section that we're gonna, that we have to replace, that lining will not address. So we're gonna be working on that soon. But I view that as a compliment because that means that you're staying on top of your system. You're not getting past a point where you can't structurally line it. There's always variables in these situations depending on how the pipe is sloped and bellies and these sort of things, but for the most part we've been able to line just about everything that we've been seeing as far as structural deficiency.
Yeah, we actually can show
Now then,
how much we've lined.
One other question on that. In terms of the priority with which you say we can do a little over a mile a year, given the funding that we've currently allocated, do we use the television, the filming, to help us prioritize where we go next to make sure we're focusing on the right spots?
We absolutely do. So our lead sewer technician uses that information to set our game plan for the next year. And now we will be using that in a GIS format thanks to SAW.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So this map shows all of our, the relining that has been done, and you can see there that we're getting close to 30% of our combined sewer system being structurally lined, which again is a huge accomplishment. Now this is, you know, it mimics that size of that existing pipe, but again, if we're doing our proper O&M, then we need to make the existing system as efficient as it can be to carry all that it can. It has limits, but I view my job as being able to make sure that it functions efficiently. So this shows you sort of an outline of all of the line section, and you can see they're all over the city. This isn't something that takes place in just one section by any stretch of the imagination.
Again, the green lines.
That's correct. The green lines are the line pipe.
And this program is paid for by the water rates that we all pay.
That is correct.
Right? This isn't something that's come out of tax dollars, but actual, anything that's on your water bill, that's how it's paid for, right?
Correct, correct.
All right. So I think this is me to address. So sort of keeping going our theme of answering as many resident questions as possible. Here are some of the really big ones that I've gotten over the course of this. So, the first is there too much construction going on? I'm going to answer this as specific to water because I know opinions very much vary on the nature of that question. But we looked at here first. We tried to, this is one of the first places we went to and said, well, what impact is this having? And where we're at now, what we looked at is to say most of these new houses are, the setbacks kind of limit where you can actually build. Again, opinions vary, but most of the new homes that are built go up. And so it's done a substantial expansion of impervious surface, and that's really what we're talking about here, is that loss of green space. Is that what's affecting us? Do these new homes, if they're so much bigger, are they adding a lot more impervious surface? So if we look back over the last 15 years, we're at just shy of about 4% of the city's building stock that have been demoed and rebuilt. I think many people point to the amount of open fields, the amount of vacant lots, and things like that have been built upon. That is absolutely an expansion of impervious surface. That is new space where we had grass or a play area before. So we also, knowing that, we went to SEMCOG. And SEMCOG does a lot of the regional impervious surface surveys. They've got a 2010 survey that they just went through. So we've got a baseline for comparison, and we're working with them now on getting a new survey done. So this is one of those things where I don't have the answer for you just yet. We think it has it is impacting it. There's no way of saying it's not, but we think it's negligible in the scheme of the overall city's footprint. So, but we're going to have a lot better answer for that moving forward once we get the survey information back from SEMCOG. This one I got a lot. Who was asleep at the wheel? Who forgot to flip a switch? Who didn't push a button? Who needs to get fired for not opening a valve? Several reiterations of that same question. And as you saw from our presentation, as you saw from WRC's presentation, is from start to finish, from a drop of rain that falls in the city of Berkeley to ending up in the GWK retention basin, there is not a valve. It's all a gravity-fed system. So I hope at least that part I can tell you a definite answer is nobody forgot to flip a switch, nobody didn't push a button. There is no mechanical manipulation of our system between here to the GWK. The first time it hits a pump, as was said, is when they go to dewater it. So after the basin fills, after the storm is done, they've collected what they needed to do, did some treatment as necessary, then they pump it out. But from start to finish, I can tell you that there are no valves, no buttons, no levers. So I hope, I like to be able to give some definite assurances on our operation. Next one is this, I saw this picture on Facebook quite a bit. This is the guy that, whoever this guy is here, was photographed sucking out a catch basin, and after that everything went down. And I can tell you fully 100% that that also was not the case. This was a photo taken on Gardner. The timestamp on Facebook has it a little bit just after 7 o'clock. So it was a little bit later after the storm, after most of us had seen the worst of it come and go. But after every other storm, every other street drained, we had an issue on Gardner. Gardner had something in the catch basin that was holding all the water in the street. But water in the streets actually works in our favor in a situation like we endured on Monday. So all they were doing here was cleaning a catch basin. After the event, we did not have to go in and remove a blockage or take anything back out. I can assure anyone who saw that, who was worried about that certainly is not the case here. So then, all right, so it's not that, then what is it? And I think this is really the question that everything boils down to, is you see how our system works, you see where it functions, you see how it's designed, how it's laid out, what it's able to do. That kind of hopefully you see that why our most plausible explanation was that a section of Berkeley got way too much rain, way too fast. And this is what we continue to try to get more information on. We believe it was true for us, and then as we dumped in a portion of the WRC drain, so we all saw it come up. Again, I don't know if Ricky Barber's here or not. He posted a video to his Facebook. I see you raising your hand. He actually videoed such a rapid displacement of air as the water is flowing into the WRC system that it created an Old Faithful like geyser of air and mist. That air was being forced out at such a high rate as water was flowing in at such a high rate that instead of just sort of drifting out, it was forcing it out with a heck of a lot of force. We saw manhole covers, start rattle. We saw some of them actually got pushed off of their seating. All these things tell us that lead us to believe way too much water, way too fast. And so we're not just looking at the sky and saying, well, it must have been you, to a certain extent. But I feel like for the last week, I have felt just like this guy. Because I would love to sit up here and tell you that this is never going to happen again. And we were kind of told that in 2014, that this was a generational storm and you don't have to worry about it again. But I can't stand here and say that there is a lot. We're going to see some slides next. I can't stand here and tell you that is the solution, the done. I had a question earlier about what is the true fix? What will stop us from ever happening again? And I don't know yet. The last 30 years look so different than what we think the next 30 years are going to look like. If we try to size a pipe, and I call this the Windsor scenario, and I'll get into that in just a minute. If we try to size a pipe for a storm, like, okay, 2014 we got 4 inches of rain. Fine, I'm going to build a 4-inch system. Take that, Mother Nature. That's what Windsor did. Windsor put $25 million into expanding capacity. Now, they didn't build it to 4 inches everywhere, but their worst trouble areas, like I said, ours would have been our southeast corner. Worst trouble areas, they put millions and millions of dollars in to building a system, And we had our rain event Monday night. They got it Tuesday and flooded basement after basement after basement after basement after investing millions of dollars in user fees and water bills into making that improvement. They ended up looking like they got it wrong, because they did, because we don't know where weather's going to go. And so I'm an old man yelling at a cloud right now. But still, let's go through some of the things that we think we could do to at least gain, what might be able to gain ground, what we could feasibly do to our system, what we don't think we can pull off. I think, again, the critical question is, what's the new normal? How do we design around it? So some of the things that we could probably do moving forward. We're looking at maybe incorporating some green policies. Ferndale Public Library, when they expanded their building, they put a green roof on. Captures water, slows its entry into the system. It's good. It won't ever be a true fix. But again, if we take a multi-tiered approach to it, we could look at this for public buildings. We could look at this for commercial buildings as they're built. Both us and the DDA are working on trying to incorporate it into the design standards for this. Can we build in more retention? I think there's been a lot of talk about soil content on social media over the last week or so. We have I won't get into the swamp versus not a swamp debate, but we know that we have a lot of clay. We have a lot of clay in our soil here, so it's not great for it's not great for letting the rainwater soak in. So do we build into our right-of-ways? Maybe we don't just worry about the street holding water. Do we look at maybe the right-of-ways? Do we look at some of the boulevarded areas, building in some retention there that could release at a slower rate? It'll help, but again, we can't look at this as saying it's going to be an absolute solve. One of the things we'd definitely like to do, as coming off of our discussion about not having a good understanding of exactly how much rain we got, was put in a network of rain gauges throughout our community so that we know, and my ideal here is that we have some sort of warning system so that you know also when we've hit a point where we're in trouble. Anybody that was watching the weather going into Monday night expected 0.2 inches of rain to fall. Boy, did they get that wrong. So you could say like, I'll look outside. So I don't know that anybody could spot 2 inches of rain versus 4 inches of rain. But if we had some sort of relay system that tells us rain's here, we've got more than probably we know that we can handle, alert goes out immediately to all of you. At least you've got some knowledge that it's coming. If there's things in your basement that you want to get out, if you've got some kind of system that you can initiate, then maybe we can actually save a couple of our precious items, things like that. That's not a capacity issue, that's more of a warning issue. So getting in after that, what do we talk about? We talk about the real big stuff. And actually, this should involve an engineer, so I'm going to call on Roland to kind of discuss separation. What does it actually look like for Berkley? Can it be done? And what kind of timeline are we talking about?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. One thing before we get into some possible options, I want to remind everybody that although this event was definitely a Berkley-specific event, events like this have happened, do happen to a lot of your surrounding communities. Communities like Birmingham, Beverly Hills, Southfield. They've had flood events that are localized flood events that have affected their cities. In the village of Beverly Hills, it took 2 events in 1989 and 1996 to spur them into some action. So what did some of those communities do? What are some of the next steps? So one of the first steps that Berkley has taken is the SAW program that we all mentioned, so we have a good feeling of the state of the pipes and what their current condition is. What we don't have a good handle on is what the capacity of the existing system is. So that's something that we could do moving forward, is we could do a capacity study to see what the current capacity of the system is and where some areas that we could improve upon that. So there's been obviously some talk on social media about a separation of the combined system. We can definitely do a partial separation. The problem that may or may not be obvious is that we have one outfall source, that is the county. So in essence, we can separate our system, but it all eventually gets discharged at the same point. This is a very costly situation. It would require digging up all of your streets over a long period of time, To install a sanitary, or to install either a new sanitary, a new storm sewer pipe, you'd use your existing pipe for one or the other. But it's a large project that would have to be done on each road, and again, you'll be limited by the amount of water that the county can take.
One thing our finance director is with us here. One of the things that we've been going over this week, and wave your hand if I've got this wrong, but this is the type of thing we would have to go with the Board of the People, have to probably get a bond to fund. If we try to do this through our water rates, it would just make the cost of turning on a faucet astronomical. One of the issues that we have as far as our borrowing power goes is that we can only borrow a bond against 10% of the city's total SEV. So that's, it's loosely tied to your taxable value because that is the city's revenue source. And just like a private mortgage or loan, you can't borrow more than you can reasonably pay back. So if we're 60 million would be our current number at 10%. So if we were to come to you and say, we want a bond for $60 million so we can do as much of this system as possible, it ends up being, what's our best estimate on 60 million? It's a fraction of the total cost. What percentage would you say? Would you even guess what a percentage of $60 million would be? Is it even into the double digits?
What, your bonding capability?
Yeah, no, a $60 million sewer separation project. How far do we think that would get us?
So one way you could look at it is knowing that you're going to have to affect your entire street. You could look at your recent Harvard project, which is affecting your entire street. That's replacing water main and the street itself, and installing new storm sewers. So something like that would need to be done on all your streets, and you'd be putting in new storm pipe as opposed to new water pipe, let's say. And that project is about $2 million, and that's three-quarters of a mile's worth of road. So you take that by 50 roads, that's well in excess of $100 million to do that on all of your roads. And obviously that takes years and years, and then
we're repaying it over 30 years where we can't do anything, literally anything else with infrastructure.
Yep.
So there are real feasibility and financial restrictions on us we've had people say, why didn't you do this over the last 3 years? I think that's probably the most telling story as to why we weren't able to do this over the last 3 years is just under this scenario, if we borrow, pay back, next project, borrow, pay back, we're looking at 100 years at least as far as our work plan goes. And mostly our system's about 90 years old now, and look how much weather patterns have changed. I can only imagine what the next century looks like.
And with relation to a separation of the sewers, that works well in communities that have a separate outfall. So cities like Birmingham, who have the Rouge River that runs through it, they're able to discharge in large events to that additional source. And then Berkley doesn't have that, as everybody knows.
Okay.
I think the next slide is maybe the image is a little misleading, but we could build relief sewers that would be a combined relief sewer that in essence would be larger sewers that would run down the middle of the street that would hold a larger amount of water. So it would increase the capacity of your system, but that only will go so far. It has similar types of cost restrictions, and at the end of the day, as Matt had discussed a little bit earlier, how big do you build it? And I'll be honest, there's really no way to build a system that will handle every storm event that will happen for the next 100 years. It's financially impossible, and it's really impossible to design because we don't know what the weather's going to be like in 50 years.
So on this one here, if you could just again explain, so what's can you repeat the gist of this, right? So is it, it's basically we'd have our own little reservoir where it would go and just relieve the main system?
Relief sewers would be replacing the existing combined sewers that run down the middle of the road with larger combined sewer pipes. Mm-hmm. So if it's an existing 20-inch, you'd make it an existing 48-inch to try to hold additional flow and release it into the county system at a rate that they can handle. Again, let's all remember that the county can only accept so much water, so we can make your system as large as is financially feasible, but you're still beholden to the amount of water that the county will accept. And you did mention a retention basin of some sort. That's an option. And again, these are all things that a study could help, say maybe some areas of the city, this one option might be better for, other areas a different option might be better for. But a retention basin could be designed and built someplace in the city, but it would require pumping, a pump station to move the water around from lower points to higher points. Also very expensive. And again, it has a capacity limitation.
Thank you. And one last question. I think maybe on the prior slide, while I've got you here, the idea of the separating the two out. You mentioned the Harvard example as a reference. We're going through that now. Obviously, the 3/4 mile for about $2 million. That's a full reconstruct, full tear out. Now, would we imagine that being? Is that like a worst case way of thinking? All 50 miles? Like, are there some parts where we could just jackhammer a little stretch down the side and put another pipe on top of the first one, and it wouldn't cost nearly as much? Not to get into technical details, but and we want to make sure we have an appropriate proposal to bring before us to make a decision on. And so I just was, curious.
Yeah, I mean, you could evaluate street by street. Obviously, what you have to remember is the actual condition of your streets. So you have many poor streets currently. And if you're going to be taking out half the street, why not take out that extra lane to get yourself
based
a
on
nice,
the Pazer results
yeah,
of the surface.
And if this is over a 20-year, 30-year period, all your roads are going to be continuing to deteriorate over that time. But yeah, you would be looked at a street-by-street basis.
Okay,
but
I
just
think
for
that
some
level
larger estimates, it's an example.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think as we look at what options we want to explore and bring to us as residents and voters, we'd want to have that level of clarity into the nature of the proposal, so we can have a price tag that we know makes sense.
Right.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Please.
Along those lines, so if we were to separate and have two systems, we're still feeding into combined pipes at the county level too? So
Correct.
we still have the potential for backup?
Yeah,
even if we were to go through?
The county can only accept so much water in their county system within your community, and at some point you have to discharge into their system, and that has a capacity limit. So if they back up, you could be separated, but your sanitary sewer system would back up like your storm sewer would back up.
Okay.
All right, so the next option?
These are some more, I'm not going to call them private options, but options that would take place on private residences. A lot of talk about check valves or backflow preventer valves. They are, if we want to talk about just some round numbers, the $5,000 to $8,000 range, depending on the existing plumbing of your house. They're installed after, so again, these images are not applicable to everybody. Many residents have toilets in their basement, so the backflow preventer would actually be installed downstream of that toilet. But it's something that I think the next slide actually shows one. So it allows flow out of your house, and conceivably it stops flow coming in. They have to be installed properly. They have to be maintained. So they definitely have a place in an application, but they're not fail-safe either.
But one of the things we've been looking at as far as the policy goes is in lieu of being able to make large capital changes to the system, exploring options to incentivize homeowners or help homeowners afford putting some of these in. It may offer the peace of mind that yes, you can utilize your basement, you can store things down there, you can create a rec room down there. So we have a couple of different options, whether or not it's we're sort of overseeing a group purchase that takes advantage of economies of scale, whether we do something like we do with our special assessment for sidewalk districts. So we go through and the city actually fronts the money. We work with the contractor to have it installed, and then over the next 2 to 3 years, you pay it back into taxes. It's basically like a 1 to 3 year 0% loan on getting something like that put in the home. I referenced City of Windsor earlier. They're just doing a straight rebate. Come to us with a receipt, and we'll give you some portion of that cost back to you, just as a way to incentivize it. So we have a lot of options as far as getting this going. We're 10 days following this storm, so I don't have the details fleshed out for you. I've not been able to bring a fully realized proposal to the City Council, but in the spirit of trying to get answers to residents, this is one of the things that we are looking at as a home-to-home project. Now, as Roland. Great question. Really great question, because I don't even have an answer to the answer about when I'm going to get an answer yet. I want to do some more exploring on some other communities. I'd like to see what worked well. I want to talk to some communities that have already done this, if they wish they would have done something differently, or if it went well, if they got a lot of people to actually take advantage of it. I know we made some recommendations after 14, but they were just sort of discussions, and not a lot of people took advantage of them. Likewise, there are risks involved here, and it's not a perfect solution. If you recall, one of the resident questions we had was, could it have some negative impact on your home? Could it fail? There's absolutely a maintenance plan that needs to come along with it. I think people have heard now, as the level grows, if you're shut off but the level of the system grows, you've got hydraulic pressure then pushing in on the home. What impact could that possibly have? And if only a handful of people take advantage of it, where does that leave the rest of those that don't? So one of the next, I'd like to get something in place by the end of the calendar year, as far as bringing to city council and making a proposal to you. I think it needs to be more aggressive. I would like that. I don't like to set deadlines I can't meet, but the work on that is going on as we speak. So I got you. For those that have written here, they were asking about timeline. When do we think we're going to get something in front of council? I want to be reasonable in saying when we could get something like that done. I said the end of the budget year. The gentleman rightly said, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, hurry up. Yeah.
Which of those options would you prefer, just out of curiosity?
Irrespective of actually when, let's say, council approves it, is that something for those of us that are fearful now of having more water coming in with the next one? If we put the check valve in now, that we would be able to get the rebate effective at let's say now, rather than some future date.
I don't have that answer for you yet, Mr. Dixon. I'm sorry. I don't have that yet.
So let's thank you guys. Continue to think these questions. He's got a couple more things, and then we'll get right into the questions. Write these down if you feel like you might lose them. But to this.
Yeah.
It's a bit too.
Yeah.
Well,
So Matt, please.
I apologize, Mayor Pro Tem, for opening a bit of a can of worms here. I'm 10 days out from this event. I won't have a lot of the answers that I know you have right now. So instead of repeating, I don't know. Let me try to get some of these questions one-on-one, whether it's email, whether it's phone calls. Let's talk about it. I would like to hear, this is not going to happen in a bubble. I want to hear what we think would be the best option for you as a homeowner. So we're going to develop this with a lot of public input, and in lieu of doing it now and me not having a lot of answers for you, please reach out to me, please get a hold of me, please walk in through the front door of my office, and let's talk about what you think you would actually take advantage of, so that if I put forth something to the City Council that doesn't work or isn't well utilized, then it's not something that we can really be proud of. So I apologize, I don't have a lot of answers for you yet. I was hoping this is the kind of thing that there would be a lot of active interest in, and I'm glad to see that there is. But we're in the very beginning stages of developing this. Like I said, I can't emphasize enough. I'm 10 days removed from the storm.
If we had the check valve installed, would that relieve the sewer water from coming up in your laundry tub, which happened 3 years ago?
It's a good question. For those that can remember, so the question was, if you had the check valve, would it have stopped water from coming into the laundry tub? The answer is, the answer is it depends, unfortunately. If you had something that blocked off the whole house, like in your lead before any of those like exit points, whether it's your floor drain, your basement toilet, your laundry tub. If it's before that point and again, properly installed, properly maintained, yes, it would have snapped shut. Now, when it snaps shut, you can't use any of the water in your house because closed is closed until this outside pressure comes down. So like in a storm that we had on Monday night, it'd most likely be reopened like within the hour because it was a very fast storm. A prolonged rain event might be, obviously would be more onerous, but it's onerous versus, surcharging through your laundry tub. So we do think it's a better option. Risks involved, and I want to make sure I know what those risks are before we start saying, this is the way to go, absolutely do it. You'll never see anything in your laundry tub again.
It's important to note that we put in the check valve after 2014, and we got 7 inches of water. So it may solve a little bit of the problem, but we have one person that it did not help us.
So, and this is a scenario that I'd like to learn more information about too. Had plenty of people who say we have one, and it didn't do the job. So again, I'd like to know why and what. I'm going to stop there. I'd like to know why that happened. Sir, you've been waving at me furiously.
Thank you. My name is Chuck Rumpler. I'm in Thomas Park, and my comment is, first of all, I want to thank you for illuminating a lot of facets to this program, this recent event. I've been thinking about it a lot and doing a little study and research myself. In my line of work, you have to quantify the problem. You have to draw a boundary diagram around it and understand where all the contributing factors are. Primarily here, what I'm seeing is a system where you have an outflow at one point from our system in the drain and many inflow points. From my point of view, if you can't measure it, you can't control it. So I don't understand what my maximum capable...
Hold on, let him finish.
If I can't understand or quantify what my maximum flow rate output of our system is, then I can't do anything to protect or restrict the inflows. Now, you talk about these grates. I'm not the most perceptive person looking down at drains when I'm walking and running around the neighborhood, but that's an interesting one. It's closed off. Mine is not, and I imagine many of them aren't. But I see all those openings in our drain system. Let's say they're 2 feet squared, and maybe because of the grates over it, they allow 3/4 of a foot squared of drainage through it. I don't know, fictitious numbers, but
I don't see the engineers going like this, so keep going.
You can calculate a maximum flow rate for each one of those. So let's just simplify it. We have 100 grates in the system, or even 10, okay? So it has a square foot of surface area to drain water through. You can calculate the maximum input of water that can drain through from the street. And if that number is larger in our current array, then the outflow device is able to accommodate, then you're going to have a backup, a progressive backup based on it, and it becomes a time scenario then. It starts to back up into the system up to those high located input pipes that come from our basements. And then we all start to get to flooding. So to me, it's more like you have to understand what the capacity of our system is to outflow water through its gravity means. So if you can't do that, you don't know what that figure is, you don't know how to guard against how much you're putting into your drains on the street. Right now, I don't see enough guarding on the street.
Yes, so we're there with the, I'm sorry.
The only idea though is just relining the pipes, make it smaller. You're relining them, you're putting something in there. Are we slowing down the flow rate?
No. So what you lose in density, and it's a high density plastic, so it's a very thin layer, you gain in removing some of those inhibitions to flow, so that particulates, anything like the cleaning takes out a lot of that. So in theory, the crossover is the water is not inhibited on its flow as much, so you get a better, stronger flow. Nothing to block it, nothing to keep it away. moving to Mr. Rumler's comment, I mean, you're right. If you dump more water in than you can get out, you're going to have problems. So that's why we were so excited to get to land this SAW grant, because we've taken our first step in mapping and getting the GIS data so that we can start to know our next step now is studying capacity, studying flow. What can we reasonably do? What makes sense for our system? And that's why we're so excited to have gotten that grant, and that's why we're so excited to move forward on some of the studies that Roland was talking about earlier. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, do you mind if my apologies,
I think we're at the point, there's more material here about other things that I think are there, but it feels like it's time to move into the interactive portion. What do you guys think? Yeah, so Matt, if there's a couple of pieces that you'd like to do, I think it's important to take the material that we've received, filter that stuff through, but give folks a chance to ask questions about stuff that we haven't covered or things that you'd like more clarity on. What do you think about that?
So I'll finish this at an appropriate pace.
We've heard plenty of explanation, and it's very interesting. But we have other issues here, like what about insurance? We're not going to be able to get insurance to protect our homes and insure our property. Okay, understanding all of this is very nice, but we need to find a solution.
I agree.
So we can get homeowners insurance.
Yeah, give us
So,
answers.
insurance, yeah. So how about this? So these are some really good themes and really good topics, and I see a lot of heads nodding at some of the items coming up. What we'd like to do is capture these and then to provide what responses we can right now tonight for some of these questions, and others will continue, right? Council meets again on the 18th. We can continue dialogue and keep these things going, stay aggressive on these plans, because I agree the timelines that we've heard so far don't feel anywhere near as focused as we need this to be. So, yep.
Okay.
Yep. So let's, what were you going to just offer?
I was going to talk about some of the things that homeowners can do, but we'll go right to the answer, right to the portion concerning answers.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, so what we'd like to do, we have a microphone up front. What we'd like to do is, for those of you that like to come up and say a few words about the question that you have, the comment that you'd like to make, please, just a couple of quick things. If your point has already, and we'll alternate left, right, coming down the different aisles to kind of have some fairness here. Please remember just a couple of things. Ideally, bring up topics that haven't already been discussed, or if there's a question to clarify, we'll do our best with the engineers and folks that are here. Please, so try to stay focused on an additive to the dialogue. Second, if you've already heard a theme that was mentioned by the person before you or something like that, then we know that we'll jot that down. What we're going to do is keep a tally here of the points that you have, the questions that you'd like to ask, and then do our best to address those in sequence. So we won't be going back and forth, but we'd like to just get the point. Okay, I think what you said is this, is that right? Okay, boom. And then we'll move on to the next thing. Please.
We have received a lot of questions from people written and submitted throughout the meeting, so those should be answered as well.
Yeah, so Darshell and team have been very carefully reviewing all of the blue forms to see what we have from those as well. So some of those things there might be covered with you folks here tonight too. So, and with that, your name and city of residence.
Tim Canny, Berkley, live in Royal. My parents moved here in '63, and that Royal would flood all of the time. In fact, we have pictures of rubber rafts going around Royal, Catalpa, back up the next street, coming around the entire block. So the city remediated that problem. Flash forward to '78 when I moved back here. From '78 to 2014, we never had water. What changed? Okay, so I buy into your 500-year storm theory. Now what theory? Now we're down to a 100-year storm theory for 2017. What has changed in the whole scheme of things? And without telling the citizens that you're going to form another committee and hire more consultants, we're looking to leadership from City Council. Not excuses, but leadership. Concrete solutions. Unfortunately, Matt got shot down on some of his comments about what the citizens can do. or what the city can do for the citizens. We've listened to a lot of stuff here tonight. We've got a great DPW department. Nobody's faulting them. Maybe it's the relining has decreased the flow, as the one citizen brought up. But we're looking for leadership. I don't think that's too much to ask, because right now I've got people on my street who are moving rather than retiring. I've got people who are paying $160 for new water heater supply, or water heaters, because their warranties are now voided on their furnace and their water heaters, things that they replaced just 2-3 years ago. We're looking for leadership. No more study committees.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maria Ward. I live at 1838 Rosemont. I have been a resident of the city of Berkeley for 63 years. My parents purchased the home that I currently live in, and I will tell you that my basement, the basement of the house, has flooded for 63 years. My question is to Commissioner Nash. We were promised when the 12-town drain was built that that would take care of the flooding problem in the basements. Why hasn't it?
Okay, thank you.
I do want an answer.
Right, I'm writing it right now. Yep, yep.
My name is Wendy Zabramski. I live at 3340 Gardner. My husband's been in Berkeley all of his life, and many of his family members. We were not affected by the flood this time or last time, but we watched it just down the road, a few houses away. My concern is the lack of leadership also in this city. And we have watched, now no longer here, city planner plan some wonderful things and really wants to make this city grow. And I believe some of that is affecting this too. We have built houses. I don't agree with the footprint thing, because we have approved variances. We have split lots. Harvard Commons was built. A multi-unit in a residential area. La Salette has been on the drawing board for the Planning Commission for the last 6 months or more, and that's all they've worked on. And I'm telling you, right now, with talking about we don't even know what capacity our sewer system can take. We don't know what those numbers are because we find it's not working the way it is. And you want to add 200, 250 more people to La Salette. I hope this stops what all that is going on for right now in this major building until we get what we have under control.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Juliette McNiven Perry, and I've been in Berkeley for 12 years. I live at 1944 Elwood, the first block north of 11, and I was so happy for my husband and I to live in a brick bungalow, just like I grew up in Dearborn. I'm not looking for a lot of answers tonight. We did go through and experience the flood in 14, as well as on the 28th, our first day of school. We are public educators in Southfield. We are big fans of Berkeley. And Mr. Turbrack, I've met you. You've come to our home before, and we appreciate your service. We have some lovely new neighbors just behind me here who have experienced a flood, I think, twice since they've been here. While I know everyone is concerned about what's happening and wants to find solutions, I guess I just feel that I want to know, Mr. Baumgardner, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, what is our city motto?
We care.
I'm sorry, what's our city motto?
We care.
I don't feel right now like there's a lot of care for the streets between Catalpa and 11 Mile. I mean, if you look at that map and if you look at the power outage, we couldn't do anything. We lost power, we couldn't shop vac anything. And I am a huge advocate for Berkley. I truly am. But I really am feeling like there is not care for certain residents in certain areas. And I would love to see that happen soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Gina, and I live at 11 Mile in Woodward, which there was some mention during this meeting that that is the southern east kind of quadrant of Berkley, and how that impacts us with water. In 2014, I had water shooting out of my drain for 3 hours. It was, a fountain about this tall, and I thank God I have a backup sump pump. I just kept sweeping it in so it wasn't standing. My question is related to the water that came into my basement. Is it always, as long as you live in Berkley, going to be a combination of sewer and stormwater that's coming up into my basement?
Yes.
Okay. So even if it looks clear and it doesn't look like the pictures I've seen brown, it's still sewer?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a combined system.
Okay, okay. So I didn't know, because I know 11 Mile got torn apart a few years back, and I live in a newer home, so I really didn't know what was going on with that water. That was my first question. Secondly, I don't want the comments that were made to rush through this information to represent everybody in this room, because I'm interested in this. I'm interested in solutions. I am a little disappointed we couldn't, as a group, get through the last 3 slides. I found that to be kind of disrespectful to those of us who are interested, because I did kind of briefly see, I think it was the rain barrels, a slide in there, which I am interested in. No one's gonna come up with billions of dollars to solve this issue overnight. We're only 10 days into this, and I have to applaud this panel for doing as much as they did in only 10 days. I'm an architect, and I know things take time and research. For me, as a resident of Berkley since 2004, realistically, if there were some of those valves that I saw and that could be supplemented somehow, I would get on board with that, because I've heard estimates $3,000 to $5,000. I can't afford that, but I would do it if there was something available. And like those rain barrels, I don't know if everybody had that. Have that helped us at all? I don't know. I know I could use that water to water my lawn. My water bill's $200 a quarter.
Right.
So
Thank you. Now that we've written it down here, that we'll
Thank
cover
you.
that piece as part of our responses.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jason Sheik. I live on Tyler. I've lived here for about 2 years. Lived through the flood in 2014 in a neighboring city. I just want to take a quick show of hands. Who in the audience actually had insurance that covers this? No, today.
Not entire.
About half, right? So my question comes back to Public Act 222 of 2001, because it seems like this presentation was largely a damage control exercise, telling the residents how well maintained our system was. When you probably have a pretty strong audience of people that work in automotive engineering, and this is what might be called a design defect, right? So can we talk a little bit longer about the situation around Public Act 222, how much time we have to defend and make our case? Because it sounds like the city engineers don't actually know the capacity of our system. And so it seems implausible for us as individual citizens without civil engineering firms behind us to make our claim be known and stand against an insurance company. Because it just seems ridiculous that the fourth frequently asked question here goes into how we're supposed to defend and make our claim to the city when we all know none of us have the capacity to prove a defect in the system. So it seems like there needs to be an additional city council meeting to talk to residents about how they can make claims and actually receive money for those claims, because half of your audience here doesn't have insurance that covers it. I do. Frankly, $5,000 didn't even cover half of my damage, right? So like, I think we should focus on making people whole in the short term, and then you guys as leaders, because obviously everyone, if you were a part of this city council in 2014, we're asleep at the wheel, right? Because all the answers that we don't have right now should have been provided 3 years ago. There should have been significant studies done back then. And the fact that there aren't answers right now is if you were a part of this council, I'm sorry, that's embarrassing.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Struble. I live at 1781 Robina. I've owned that home. My wife and I have lived there for 46 years. 2014 is the first time my sewer has ever backed up in all the time we've lived there. We had over 3 feet of water in the basement, lost everything that was down there. I understand that was a regional-wide event. That was the 100-year storm that I heard about. I had no insurance. We did everything ourselves. It was horrible. Probably one of the worst things I ever went through in my life. So I took safeguards. I bought a generator. I had my house, the whole basement, waterproofed. I installed cameras so I could watch my basement. I put in an alarm system with a water sensor. And this event, this time, my wife and I left the house to go to an event on the east side of town over in Grosse Pointe Woods. We left at 5:40. What I'm talking about is your timeline and how much water we got. NOAA says 2 inches. Somebody's backyard rain gauge says 5 inches, but who knows if that was emptied before the rain started. We left at 5:40 and it wasn't raining yet. We saw the clouds coming. We drove out to the east side. I got there, and at 6:11, 31 minutes later, I got a phone call from the alarm company saying I had water in my basement. I checked my camera that I put in. Sure enough, 6-7 inches of water throughout the entire basement. That was in 30 minutes. It wasn't the between 6 and 8. At 6:10, my basement was underwater. So I think you're a little off on your figures of how much rain we got. I'm sure it rained hard, there's no doubt. I've been here 46 years. I've been through a lot of heavy rainfalls. There's something wrong with our system that's not taking this water away.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Robert Buxbaum. I'm a professional engineer. I live in Oak Park, and I ran for water commissioner 2016. The thing that strikes me is that the cheaper solutions never ever get mentioned, and I wonder why that is. I have a thought. The cheapest solution for retention is what's called a drain. It's actually a ditch. Costs about $10 per lineal foot, and it gives you an awful lot of retention. That's been used since Babylonian times. A fancier version that costs about $100 per lineal foot, and now we're up to about 15 cents a gallon of retention, is a French drain or a bioswale. Very, very cheap solutions that definitely work. If you want to see some of them, you can see them in Southfield, you can see them by the Oakland Mall. This is not like high tech, but they never get mentioned. I've often noticed that Hubbell, Roth & Clark, your engineering firm, just loves very, very expensive solutions. Have you thought about asking around for another engineering firm? I guess is one question I can suggest. Another suggestion is just retention. There's lots of cheap versions, and I think you'll also find that separating the sewers is not as expensive as HRC likes to claim either, but we'll leave that for later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Andy Tucker. I live at 2062 Tyler.
I've been in that house for probably 25 years. My neighbor across the street's been there for 44 years, never had any water problems until 2014. We had about 8 inches of water. I was home, I was diligent, I plugged my drains as the water came in. I got about 5 inches of water. The neighbors on both sides of me got 2 to 3 feet. People across the street got 2 to 3 feet. There's a house behind me, I think, got 8 feet. This time, same scenario. We're watching the storms in Houston. We get a heavy rain, okay, big deal. We get a blip on the news that says we could get 3 inches of flash flood. Okay, so what? 15 minutes later, I also have a water sensor in my basement that's squealing. We run in the basement, the water's coming out of the floor, the toilet, the tub's full, water's coming everywhere. I could hear gushing water coming out of the air spout that's the drain stack for my bath, or for the washing machine. It came in fast, as this other gentleman said. It was probably a half an hour. I sat at home and it thundered for an hour and never rained between 4:30 and somewhere in that 5:30, 5:45 time. And my wife got home, we were having dinner. She wasn't home more than a half an hour. So if that rain came in that fast, I agree with this gentleman 100%. If it's fast and it's furious, stop the water from going down the drains. If you've got these restrictor plates, why aren't they on every storm drain in these lower areas? We're on that southern part from Catalpa. Everywhere around there has that. If they don't have them on there now, there's absolutely no reason. That seems to me the cheapest, fastest solution until you can come up with another solution. I applaud the city for being out there at my house at 8:30 in the morning picking up my carpeting. I mean, we drug it out that night. We pumped every bit of water out. There was nothing we could do other than go into damage control. And I think the fastest solution to short term is slowing the water flow into the drain so that the water can get out. Because the minute it stopped raining, the water quit coming in, and then the neighbors call and say, hey, the water's going down, I unplugged my drain, and it was gone. So I just think we need to do something in a short term. Great, all these other ideas are fantastic for separating the drains because nobody wants sewer water, but if we can come up with a better solution for short term, this won't happen again in 6 months because I got PTSD from this whole thing, and I'm sure everyone here has that. Every time it rains, I freak out, and I'm sure everybody here is the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is George Stevens. I live on 1527 Eaton. I did not flood this time around, but I do see that there has been changes up here from 2014 that we're having a council meeting a few days out that I don't think we had. I think things are being looked into right now that we don't think we had back in 2014. But I think the frustration lies in here is why are we asking the same questions that we were asking in 2014 with no answers? And my wife, just before I came here, Googled how to prevent sewer backups on a large regional level, and restrictor plates came up, reservoirs came up, all these things, but I never heard any of this back in 2014 when this first happened. And I know you're looking into, and sounds like, and Matt, I know you weren't here in 2014, and it seems like these are being looked into, but I think we could be a lot further down the road if that happened 3 years ago instead of where we are at now. And I really hope, I'm not looking in the past, I'm looking to right now, I really hope that we're not facing this 3 years from now and we're looking back and saying, what did you do 3 years ago again? Please heed these warnings, heed our stories, and actually do something this time around. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
My name is John Barbasak. I'm at 1405 Franklin Road. I've been involved in Berkeley in a lot of big ways, and I'm going to kind of look at this a little different way. I've talked to many of these guys up here, and also I think we're lucky to have the people we do. I know they're taking a lot of things, but anyhow, also I was born in 1932, which is when I'm as old as Berkeley. I'm wondering if there's a way within this program, because ours is somewhat different. We heard you've heard all this, these things that you heard just now. We have, as I said, and we have the things at Woodward, and our street floods frequently, and I think there's ways, we've discussed it, and I just wonder if somewhere within the budget, I mean, we have one place that's 1924, we have another one that faces Woodward instead of the way it should. So, I mean, we're real proud of our town, we're real proud of the area. But we've been flooded since our first one came in 1960. And you know, we go back and we did all the things we could to get those things settled out. And then we had the one that we were talking about in 1914, 14, the one we just had, 14. And with that one, again, the water, so it looks to me, and I've discussed this, and there must be a way that in our unique situation with the amount of water coming from Woodward is coming down in that particular area, and the gentleman was upset about shortly about what was done, but we ended up on our last one in 1914, and we got water coming down our driveway, and my wife and I stand on the first floor, and I don't know how I can get through two doors. This water is a tough thing, so what you guys are doing is tough, but I don't know about this. So we watched this, and that water went down that step, one step at a time, and it came right up to the top layer. So we've been through all this. We've done everything we can. We've talked about it. I'm just wondering if there's somewhere within this budget, or this is a different field. You guys are talking about big major things. This should be simple, and I think, I'm not necessarily true, but when we got there, that was a nice restaurant. It was known, it was well known, the Berkley, whatever, and it was known because that's the last place you could get a drink before you got to Berkeley. That now is one big loaded with all these businesses in it. If you stand there and watch the water come out of their truck, you just stand there. And we did get the thing turned because it was going down our street, but if you watch that, you can clearly see that the amount of water that's challenged.
Mr. Burbsek, sorry, did you have a particular recommation or a question that you'd like us to address?
I guess what I'm saying is I wondered if there's somewhere within this budget that we can get those kind of things, because like I said, this one, in closing the last one, like I told you, the water just came in. Yeah. So I'm just asking if there's a way somewhere with this budget, or can we raise the money somehow? Sure. Because it's a fantastic street. We're right next to Shirley's big street. And I mean, it's a nice area. We've been there that length of time. No, I have no complaints. I'm asking, can you find a way that we can work something?
Sure, thank you.
I know all you people, and I know how hard you're working, so I don't have that gripe. So thanks.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Tim de Tavernier. I live at 1759 Elwood, which is the very end of Elwood by 11 Mile. Moved in 2009. You know, after about a month, our street flooded. Thought it was a pretty rare event. And then I realized that it happens about once a month. I don't know why, but water used to come up through my basement shower. On a regular basis. It wouldn't often spill over the basin of it, but sometimes it would. So we did have a backflow preventer put in 2012. It did fail during both major floods. My street still floods, again, on a regular basis, to the point where I can't park my car in the street in front of my house if there's supposed to be rain, because I'm worried about my car flooding. You know, every once in a while, the city will come by and sweep the drain, but that's the only thing that I've seen done about that. I have 3 small children. I happen to be fortunate that I work for a company that I was able to do all of my own restoration. Otherwise, over the 2 floods, I would have been out at least 10 grand. But, you know, it was heartbreaking to throw out all of my child's toys. And I just want to impose upon you guys a true sense of urgency, because if we don't get some resolution pretty soon, I am going to have to move. I will not live in an unsanitary home with small children, and that's it.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Hi, my name is Lisa Kempner. I live on Columbia. We flooded in 2014, a year after we moved here, and we flooded again. I cannot go through this every 3 years. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's horrifying. And I'll tell you, the 4 inches or 5 inches, that's kind of not even a point at this point. We were flooding within 15 to 20 minutes. I know because I looked at the clock and went, oh, I didn't wake up my daughter from her nap at 5:45, because she usually gets up at 5:30. I went and got her, it started raining, and because I still have a little PTSD, I went running down, and it was flooding. I had a phone call at 6:11 where I started calling neighbors, going, get down in the basement because we are flooding. It came up fast and hard, way faster than it did in 2014. Way, way, way harder. So, unless we were getting 4 inches in that 15 minutes, which would be unprecedented amount of rain for us, 4 inches doesn't matter what happened in that 15 minutes that we couldn't take on that heavy rain, because we're going to have more heavy rains. That's not going to be the only heavy rain we ever had. I don't want to flood every 3 years. I really don't. We have to come up with a solution. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, since we're looking at redoing streets and water lines, what is the added cost to do something about the sewers and that? Don't give me a full cost, because if we're already doing this, then it only makes sense that you would do the sewers at the same time. I don't understand why you wouldn't. You have to do something to increase the capacity. And I'm very confused about it had to be just too much rain in too little time, because when you're looking at the map and you're saying, well, all the water in Berkeley flows down to here where there was no flooding, then how come we got all this flooding? I mean, it's a small city, right? Somebody didn't get 5 inches and somebody get 2 inches in, 3 blocks difference. That's just not how it generally works. So something else happened. Instead of saying, well, we know it's not new builds, well, we know it's not the sewers, we know it's not, let's go, we don't think it is, but we're not sure what happened, because I think that's what y'all are kind of saying, right? We don't know what happened, we don't know how to fix it, so don't tell us what absolutely didn't happen, because you don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marianne Markle. I live at 1882 Bacon. I've been here since 1990. The first thing I did when I moved into Berkeley, because I wanted my basement to be usable space, was waterproof my basement. I waterproofed it, put a sump pump in. I never had a drop of water in my basement until 2014. When I had a huge amount of basement, I adopted children in 2012, so my entire living space down there was completely lost. It was a $65,000 loss for me in 2014. I had $5,000 worth of insurance. So I'm still paying off a FEMA loan. I mean, from them, from the government, not from FEMA, but a loan from them. So a week ago Monday, after 14, I put in 2 backflow valves. Had a plumber come in, put them in, did everything I was supposed to do, maintained them, did everything I'm supposed to do, and I have water in my basement again. I don't know what to do. I'm frustrated. I hear you're trying to find a solution, but I agree with other people. It came up, if it can't hold the water, then why does it literally come up and go down in like a 10-minute period? Just enough to ruin everything. It's not like it slowly built up and it slowly creeped in and it was staying in my basement. It didn't. It was up and down and gone in probably 15 minutes. So the whole thing about we can only handle so much capacity doesn't make any sense to me. I'm a nurse. I'm looking at this, again, from a fix-it standpoint. Something's not adding up here. I don't have an answer, but I'm also looking at, do I need to leave Berkeley? I have kids in high school. I don't want to leave Berkeley. I like it here. I chose it on purpose. But again, I'm having PTSD. I haven't slept in 3 nights because every time it starts raining at all, I'm awake all night checking my basement. I've already had the carpet removed, all the drywall's out, all the tiles out again that was just replaced. Thankfully, it didn't take out the furnace and the hot water heater this time, or the washer and dryer. It's very disappointing. So I'm needing an answer, because if not, I'm looking to leave, and it's making it hard to say, what's going to happen to my home value? What's going to happen now if I want to sell my home? You have to declare it's been flooded twice in 3 years. Other people have said, well, don't refinish your basement. That's like saying to me, of my 1,000 square foot house, I'm going to lose a third of my living space. That's not fair. There's an issue here that it's bigger. I don't have an answer, but I need an answer.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Paul Jordan. I live on Tyler. I got a couple of, minor little points here that may not seem to relate, but as you guys know, my mind wanders like a puppy that gets out of the yard sometimes, so I'll try and keep it on track. A little earlier today, we had a very nice letter from Edison saying that they apologized for the power failure. The folks that live up by Pattongill have had 4, 5, 6 power failures since the first of the year. I would like to have Edison address that. I would like for them to come and make a presentation to people and say, hey, here's why this is happening and we're going to address it. Now let's talk about flooding for a second. My family's been in the house since 1954. We've been through the 12-town floods and all that good stuff. And we actually end up having a verdant pond in our backyard when it rains bad. When we go to sell that house, flooding is going to be impacted by that, if for no other reason than when you put a new build in, they change the grade. They raise it, level it off, do this, do that. When you go on the street there, what is that, Oakshire, where they've got like 12 new houses in a row, that side of that street is significantly higher than the other side. The grade is higher. I understand that we're supposed to have it where the houses are built and everything is contained in the lot, but you're still getting that runoff where the grade has changed. So to say that the new builds are not affecting the floods, it's kind of disingenuous.
So you had the one question about the power failures and the question about the grading with the new builds.
Yeah,
and kind of keeping track here for the...
One other quick point.
Please.
The day after, I was walking down Webster, and I had actually emailed this to Matt, too.
Okay.
Beautiful day. Sunny, no rain in the sky. And I'm looking at Royal Oaks side of Webster, and they got water flowing out of the sewer. Now, you can't tell me there's not a problem there. And I understand that it's their side of the road, it's theirs. But we're all tied into that system. We all share it together. And it's got to be, that's something else too, folks. This is a regional problem. It has to be a regional answer to correct it. 2014 was horrendous. 2017 was not as bad, but I've worked for the government. There are two things that move at the same speed: glaciers and government bodies. We could have had something put together, like 2 weeks after the 2014 incident, and you're not going to have a shovel in the ground to fix the problem in 2017. It's going to take longer than that. And that's all I got, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
My name is Gene Dixon. I own property on both Oakshire and Rosemont. We had the water in 2014 and again now. I think the expectation that Oakland County is going to lead us to the promised land is not going to work. I mean, in reality, the drain commissioner is not even an engineer. He was a postal. He worked for the post office, was my understanding. Okay, so I don't quite see how. In fact, if we ask the folks that are over on Middle Belt, that the Oakland County drain group took off of their wells Some of those people didn't have water for a year after that because they screwed it up so royally. They've spent millions of dollars trying to fix that problem. You know, so it's something we're going to have to fix ourselves. And I like what the gentleman talked about, the ditch. You know, it's a simple solution. And in fact, I'm going to give you two names of people on the drain board that we may get better answers from. One is Tom Middleton, who's on the board. His phone number is 248-620-6551. And the other one is Mike Gengel. And I just have the main number for him, and it's 248-858-0100. But I think we might get better answers from some of the people on the board than we would from someone who's not an engineer. Thank you.
Thank you. So a couple more comments, and then we'll do the best. We don't want to respect the other folks' time, and we'll begin to address the topics that have been brought up thus far. So we'll hear from the four of you, and then we'll shift gears. And then if there's any additional, then we can do another round, time permitting.
Yeah, just a quick one.
Thank you.
Austin Chapman, I live at 2178 Gardner. I've flooded twice now. Will this facility be available the 18th for the next meeting? Because I would assure you a lot of us would want to attend and expect some answers and hopefully some next steps from the answers to the answers that we're all looking for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So I would hope that would be posted on the social media sites and whatnot, but I feel like City Hall is not going to be the proper location for the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
My name is Zach Cotella. I've lived in Berkeley 39 years. I live at 1756 Rosemont. I just want to remind everyone we have a combined sewer, which means every flush, every load of wash, every load of dishwashing starts to fill our system. We can't predict the weather, so the more volume we bring in taxes that system. I ask the council right now to think about all the building permits and developments you're thinking about until the infrastructure is fixed, because it's going to keep, the more people we introduce to the system is going to keep combining and filling and filling and filling, and then rain comes and we can't control that. So please think about that.
Thank you.
Hello, Jim Pesta. I live on Gardner Avenue. Just a couple quick things. Wanted to thank the three council people that actually talked to us at the beginning and shared your experiences and that stuff. That was great. I just have a couple of quick personal questions. Is there a logbook on when they clean out sewers? Because coming out of our toilet, there were leaves, helicopters, a whole bunch of stuff. And I can assure you we don't have a tree in our basement. Can I view the televised viewing of my pipe? Actually, I want it for my 6- and 9-year-old because they have PTSD too from the last 3 years. And we waited until Friday to get our trash picked up. I know DPW is kicking tail and taking names everywhere else, but Griffin, the street 1 block away from us, was covered 3 times, and we were only covered once. And I'm just wondering what the discrepancy was and how the pattern flow. And I'm assuming they knew Gardner was hit because we were on TV a couple of times. So, okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
My name is Guy Bennett. I'm at 2993 Kipling. We didn't have a drop of water until 2014. House was built in 2005, new construction with the back check valve. So we didn't get the sanitary then, and we didn't get sanitary backup this time. But what has changed is the property behind us was new construction just this past year. They tore down the old house. And the structure, the garage is much higher. The property was built up much higher. And the plan was that they were supposed to have a swale to keep the water from flowing into my yard. The problem with my yard is the water. We had almost a foot of water the other day in the backyard. And in 2014, we had the water was a lot higher and the air conditioning unit was underwater. And of course, we had 3 feet of water in the basement. So my statement or question is, to build off the one gentleman a little bit ago who said, you know, be aware of the permits you're allowing and how high people are allowed to build their properties and drain on others. I've spoken to a couple of people at City Hall quite a few times about, you know, the grade and the certificate of occupancy and all that kind of thing. Because that water just ends up in my basement when it's collecting like that in the backyard. So just those are the kinds of things I wanted to mention with this situation.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Okay, Matt, I'm going to play tag with you here, if that's all right. I started to capture themes as I heard them. What I'd like to do is just kind of give you some of the headlines here, see if that matches with what you have, cross-reference that with what Darshell and the team have been compiling, and then we can work through as many themes as we can. There's some kind of official thing where we'll need to decide to extend the meeting when we get to the 10 o'clock point, so we can do a check-in on how we're doing if we go that far. There was actually the questions about you know, what changed since 2014, both locally and then regionally. So you can kind of recap on what's changed. Questions around 12-town drain, the efficiency of that system. Questions around the development and new builds and grades, those types of things. And then future-looking projects, we can include like La Salette, those types of things in there. Capacity of the sewer system, the combined sewer and storm. Again, if we could, you know, if there's any additional insight we can offer on the combined sewer and storm. Some of the material that we weren't able to cover a moment ago about some of the resident options, questions about that. The PA 222 of 2001. The timeline, the aggressiveness with which the water moved, and much like you guys, again, I had stories, right? We're watching the rain. I too have the PTSD, and when I saw the coming down there and it coming up into the yard, I went downstairs, and sure enough, I saw it coming right up, and it seemed to happen really fast as well. So questions on the timing. The notion of ditches and French drains and things like that as options. Another timing question. The restrictor plates, again, is a quick action. Restrictor plates again. The comment about the power failures. So maybe we saw the one comment from DTE. I don't think we have any other formal representation from them tonight. So certainly that's an action we could seek. Another one on the rebuild, ditches. Questions about where we could hold the next meeting. And then the logbook and viewing the cameras, the actual footage and things. So those are some of the themes that I was able to capture. I tried to summarize some of them if I heard something that seemed kind of consistent to something else. Well, Matt, if I could ask, did you hear any additional themes or stuff that you'd like to add into the menu here for part two?
I think that covers it well, sir.
Okay. Darshell, I see you nodding. Is there any, from our forms here, is there any unique themes or topics that you guys saw as you were processing all the insights that we received? And we're going to save these. We're going to continue to look at these. Was there anything in there that you'd want to add to the menu? And if not, then I'll kick it back to Matt to guide us through those topics. Okay, she's just kind of looking to see if there's anything specifically there. Thank you. This is Darshell Strickland-Love, our Deputy City Manager.
If I could just briefly give you an overview of the kinds of, I have groupings of questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Why weren't the surrounding communities affected to the same extent that Berkley was during the rain event?
Okay.
A lot of why questions.
Sure.
What are we doing to adjust the taxes for the damage? I'm sorry, if they can't use the basements.
Okay.
Another group of questions relate to what measures were taken after the 2014 flood. Some of these are repeats of what we've already heard.
Sure, sure.
Another group of questions, and a lot of these questions are actually the same question.
one person wanted to get a map showing the direction of the flow for each street. Are we sure that it's only happening here? There's a number of questions that relate to the 11-mile, 12-town drains.
Okay.
Other individuals, how do we know that they were affected, they didn't make a report?
Oh, right, right.
And I think that the short answer was we did that by according to how the collection was. And then this last group of questions have more to do with what will be done, why wasn't something done before? Very, very similar questions to what you've already heard.
Sure, sure, thank you. Okay, so I guess I want to say some of the things about the maps and all that kind of stuff. These slides will be made available on the website. This material here tonight will be made available. So those who want to study some of the information that was shown tonight, you'll be able to review that at your convenience. Thank you. The Sure. So the question is around if there's higher resolution images, and
We do.
Yeah.
We do. We can have those
Yeah.
available for download.
Okay. Yep. Good. Thank you for the clarity. Yep. Resolution drawings and stuff. Yeah, and extra details. Okay. All right, Matt. Let me give this back to you so we can begin to process some of the themes that have emerged in the additional questions here.
Sure. You had a good flow, so if you want to just start with the first topic, and we'll see what we can address. Sort of taking a step back, I must have misrepresented myself, and I apologize. There is much we do not know. There is much we still need to study. This was not the last word on this topic by any means. So I do apologize to the council and to people here, to the people that have already walked out, to the people still in the lobby. If I came off as saying that this was the last one on the topic, it is certainly not the case. This is most accurately this is a check-in. We want to let you know what we do know. We want to let you know what we don't know at this point, and where we're going with our study. So I apologize if I gave the wrong impression to say this is it, done, and we're not talking about this anymore. We know that's not going to be the case. I know that's not going to be the case. My staff knows that that's not going to be the case. So I can assure you that's not going to be the case.
Right.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
Yeah, because we are by no means finished with this topic. So again, the theme around what's changed or hasn't changed since 2014. I know we had some material on that. Is there any additional insight that you could offer at this point, besides what's already covered, and yet what we're going to continue to research?
No, I've heard I had a couple people at the podium that said, 14 was the first time, and I've had it more than one time since.
Right.
That we want to know whether that is what could cause that and why that would be the case. But that's one of those things that we don't yet have an answer for people yet.
Okay. Was there any additional comments to the effectiveness of the 12-town system? Is there data or any insights that we could offer about the ways in which it's performed for us? Anything that you'd like to add above your earlier commentary? Thank you, sir, for your additional comments.
I guess I give a brief history of the 12 towns and why it was done. And I do know that the one woman who came up and said it never helped her or her household. I think it would have to be looked at on an individual basis, because I know that there are 12 towns drain system was considered a great success. It alleviated flooding, widespread flooding, very frequent flooding across all of southeast Oakland County. So I know I've heard other comments from people that say just the opposite. Like, it used to be very bad until the 12 towns drains were built. So that's it. I know it's not an answer that you want to hear, but it's
So maybe there's a way that if folks had specific questions, they could either work through our office or through work with you guys directly to explore that in more detail.
It's important to, you'd have to look for if it's an individual house that says they were never helped by the 12 ounce drain system, then that individual house, their flow may not have been based on, their own basement backup problem might not have been based on the county's drainage system.
We need to look into it, yeah. Mr. Nash?
Right, we're absolutely willing to help you anyway. As we study these issues, we're here to help you with all the data we have. So anything we can do to help in the process of learning all we need to do on this we're here to help.
Thank you. And there was a request for a more detailed images and drawings and things. Maybe there's ways that we can make those available to our folks as well. Or whatever detailed drawings and images to help with some study, that'd be great too.
Absolutely.
And can you, if people are worried that they don't have engineers working for them at your level, can you help people understand that, I mean, Gary, you are an engineer. Well, Jim, it's not your professional background. You do work hand in hand with engineers, correct?
That's true, absolutely.
So if anyone's worried that these aren't engineers working on this, or if anyone's worried that they are engineers working on this, but the Water Resource Commissioner does employ civil engineers to work on these issues and address these problems.
And I will say this about the 12 towns also. Over the course of the last 4 to 5 years, all the drains through the city of Berkeley, the county's drains, were CCTV'd and rated the same way that you guys are doing it, using the same SAW grants that were a 90-10 split by the state, and particular sections were identified for rehabilitation work and things of that nature. So it's, we're doing the same sort of system monitoring and cleaning and rehabilitation that Berkeley is.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, we employ some of the best engineers you'll have in the state. We've won awards for a lot of our projects, and we have really good engineers, as does your city too. So, again, we're here to help in any way we can. Whatever information we can supply to you to help you understand all these things, we're here to help, and that's what we want to do.
Great. Thank you again, sir. Yep. So the next up, we had talked about the development and the new builds. There was questions. I know we addressed that a little bit, so can we?
Yes, and likewise, again, I apologize for them, make myself clear. We don't know, that's one of those things that I can't count out yet. Switches, levers, buttons, that I can tell you was not the case. New builds, to kind of repeat what I said before, we're working with SEMCOG and getting a new impervious surface study done so that we can compare it back to the 2010 base data and see how that's changed and see what impact that could be yielding on the city as a whole. Impervious surface and a single family household, there's not a requirement for detention. But in like some of the larger projects, we do require detention per the Oakland County standards. So like Harvard Commons, they were required to put in detention underneath that condo complex. It fills and it releases at a slower level. The La Salette parking lot, there's no endorsement here to be read on the current PUD, but anything that goes in there, whether anything at all, that turns that thing into anything other than a parking lot, they will likewise have to detain water and release it at what used to be called an agricultural rate, but now has a different terminology for it. But it captures slow release as opposed, like right now, La Salette's basically an asphalt funnel that captures and just, I think it unrestricted, because it's private property, I think it flows unrestricted into the city's sewer system or the combined system. So we do have standards and safeguards in place for larger developments, not for single family households though, which is why that impervious surface study is so important and one of those ongoing things. I will not and cannot discount yet the expansion of impervious surface as being part of the problem that we're seeing.
Great, thank you. And to the notion of reviewing those and ensure that any new build is appropriate, we also want to make sure that the grading is in there as part of that factor as well, because that came up several times as well. And getting more details is exactly what we need for any of these kind of things. Sir, did you have a clarifying question? I think we've already heard
I
from you.
did, and I just wanted to re-summarize some of the things that you stated earlier, and thanks again for, trying to create a sense of understanding about what happened. I didn't get a chance in front of the mic because I was speaking from back there.
Well, we've heard from you,
right.
yeah.
So to recap that point, and I hope that you've got that elaborated, except for the brief summarization you made, is that we've gotten a lot of input from a lot of agencies and a lot of their external forces, and we're going to take some of these initiatives ourselves to try to figure out what this problem is and how to address it correctly. We need to trust these sources, but then verify it ourselves, and I think that means that we need to own this and find out some of these things, commission a study that is an actionable open item from this committee, and report it to the people. And I mean what I said before about quantifying our maximum outflow rate, okay? That's a number out there. And if we've got more than that coming into our drains, this is always going to happen. And until you quantify that, until you figure out or get the right people on board to quantify how much is coming in versus how much can go out, then you're flying blind. This stuff's going to keep happening.
Thank you. Thanks again. So comment a couple of times about the combined sewer and storm process. I know we covered that just briefly as one of the slides. Is there anything additional we'd like to add tonight on the notion of having a combined sewer versus separating the two?
I would like, we didn't hold anything back this evening, so what we were able to present tonight was the full extent of the information we have at this time.
Okay,
We
so...
we didn't hold anything back in case this came up. We gave you everything we had right now.
All right, so if there's additional work that we could do to try to understand what the options are and the advantages and disadvantages of that, some additional work there, okay.
Including what one person talked about, the incremental cost of adding retention to our existing road improvement plan.
Right.
That's something that we would like to have delivered before council.
Okay, thank you. Yep, certainly lots more to come here in the next couple of days and weeks. Could you briefly cover a couple of the last slides that we didn't get a chance to at least for folks who are interested in what kind of content we have? Not necessarily take it in its long form, but highlight some of the additional points that we were hoping to make tonight.
If you'll indulge me just momentarily, I'd like to go back to this. Mr. Bucksbaum made his comment and left, but this was what he was talking about. This is, instead of having an open ditch, you would have bioswales, bioretention areas. They would just have loose soil, flowers, something like that, but it's you're excavating clay, you're putting in loose materials, you're adding to the retention. So that's right in line with what I believe the gentleman was referencing. So we are presenting it. It's a misnomer to say no one's talking about it. It was right here on the big screen. So moving into some of the things on the micro level that a homeowner can do, rain barrels are definitely an option for people, and we're going to hit rain gardens in just a moment. My former community had a rain barrel program because it had issues with having a very wet system. The benefit's twofold. It's one of those things where water's captured, and if you got one, it's about a 55 gallon. If you got multiple ones, you're just helping your neighbors out immensely. And plus, you get to capture that water, reuse it, redirect it away from the street, redirect it away from eventually the combined system, and then you've got it on hand to utilize for whatever your irrigation needs are. It's not potable, you can't drink it, but it's good for the flowers. It's good for anything that needs water that isn't, an animal or something like that. So that's a great option. That's on the micro level. That's something that people can do if they have concerns. Likewise, rain gardens. Speaking again, pulling from a previous community, the City of Lathrop Village has an open ditch system, but it still had a lot of issues with water. One of the solutions that had been implemented over the years was the development of rain gardens throughout their ditch network. And this operates under the same way. So you're building in bioretention, you're building in a way to hold water, capture it for a brief period, slow the rate, in which it enters, and then you get the benefit of having what is absolutely a beautiful garden along with it. So those that are interested in beautifying the community, beautifying their own backyard, this is a great way to do it. And again, it's one of those community benefits that we all see a little bit of gain from that. We would want to implement those. We want to get a lot of residents to do that if they're able to, if they have that green thumb, for it to make a significant impact. But if we start to do it in our green belts, if we start to do it in our right-of-ways, residents start to do it there, then we're really starting to build towards what we hope is a solution. So those are the last two items. I know there's not a lot of people left to see them, but we tried to bring kind of macro. Berkley would be more like a mid-cro, and then at the homeowner level, the micro improvements that we'd like to see made. But it does center around holding that water above ground, out of the system for as long as possible, so that that can be released at a much slower rate, so we don't have that forceful overwhelming of our system that people describe, where it came up real fast and then it went away real fast. That force is a problem.
Thank you. Councilmember Turbrack.
So, Matt, where would we be able to do that? So you mentioned right-of-ways, you mentioned potential medians. I mean, for us, there are a few things that people talked about that we would like to be able to implement immediately, like as soon as possible. If we're talking about, digging ditches or retention ditches, whatever we want to call them, or bioretention swales, we're looking at potential medians. So we've got, a long median along Coolidge. We've got some medians on some other roads. Where else could we do this? Maybe this is a dare question, I don't know.
Yeah, it might be a Derek question. I know we've had preliminary discussions about where it'd be most feasible. We would, areas that we know we think are prone to surface flooding, that we think need more help in surface retention. It might be useful, some of those blocks that maybe don't have the restricted, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of public spaces,
Yeah.
and you're looking at boulevards, parks, those type of areas to be able to potentially store water in. Again, the benefit there is very regionalized. We have to understand that, but a benefit nonetheless. But, I'd love to put something in one spot and know that everybody's better off for it, but it's not quite that simple. But
hopefully with a network of these things in our public and our right-of-ways and our public property, we might be able to gain some ground there.
I think that's a real good thing worth pursuing as well in the next, again, couple of days and weeks. Because every gallon of water that's not in the system is a gallon less water we have to worry about in the short term. So I think that's good. So the follow-up point to that is there's things that we can do at the regional level, things we can do as a municipality, and there's encouragement that we could offer to the residents and provide them with information, and maybe there's ways we could do group buying things or help them with subsidies or something.
And people that see a lot of backyard flooding at the surface, probably their ground has a high clay content. So excavating that clay, putting in looser soil might give that water a place to go. Well, yeah, I mean...
Right, so why aren't we talking about that instead of the right-of-ways and medians? Let's talk about a larger solution of micro-solutions, right?
That network.
I
we're
think
talking about public spaces, but our property values are decreased by these events, right? You could do a double for the community by trying to fix the problem, but also trying to help people's property values by improving their
that's exactly why we're
talking about it. Thank you for that.
It shouldn't rest on us financially. It should come from the city as well.
You wanna do? We're gonna rebroadcast this on YouTube and the. So you want to walk?
So
talk to the mic real
the
quick?
comment was that she has the French drain in their backyard, and it's not sufficient, right? You haven't had any.
Luckily, it's not our house.
Right.
The whole backyard's flooded. The French drain doesn't work. The person who lived in our house spent thousands of dollars to fix it.
Right. The point being that.
Water in our garage, all the way back. The whole garage is rotted.
Okay. So it does, certainly just one French drain alone doesn't do the trick. Yes. Thank you. So. Right. Thank you. Thank you for that point as well.
To be able to get the maps from AAA, which would show the little rivers that used to be under Berkley.
Yep.
They only have so much potential
So
to keep the ground dry.
right. So the comment is that that there's less opportunity now than before because of the builds and things.
Well, no, it's just, you're not going to fight Mother Nature.
Oh, and Mother Nature runs its... Right. Thank you. Some of the additional topics that were surfaced, is there anything we could touch? This might be yours, John. Is there anything on that PA 222 that we want to talk about tonight? That item was raised.
I guess I'm looking for my mic, and I guess it's right on my
You're
tie.
wearing it, yes.
Well, there's not much to say about that other than I believe we do have a page on our website that provides the claim procedure that is to be followed, that anyone who does want to make a claim has to do so within 45 days. That's pursuant to the state law. And the state law does provide the conditions in which a governmental agency can be liable for a sewage event.
Okay.
That's basically all I can say. I'm
there's the
not
process.
in a position to give people individual legal advice this
Sure,
evening.
sure. But the process is there and it can
The
be followed.
process is there, it's been in the state law, it applies on a statewide basis, not just to this incident, but
Okay.
to all incidents in the state of Michigan.
Thank you. We had talked about the ditches and the French drains a couple of times. There was a question again around the timing, the rapidness with which this all seemed to occur. Is there anything else that we could comment on tonight about the timeline? That came up. The timeline came up a couple of times.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, if I could.
Please.
I'm Kathy DeRocher. I live at 2841 Royal, and I have seen on Webster, on the Royal Oak side, there is a gutter at Parker, and when it rains, the water just gushes onto the Berkley side. It's between Robina and Wakefield.
Okay.
And I don't know if you realize that or if it should be checked out, but I don't think that's...
Okay, so we're
This is
getting
previous. This
we're getting
wasn't
other
even-
people's water as part of our problem as well. Then.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's adding to it. I just wanted you to know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. The question is, we're going to work with the neighboring communities.
And it
about
wasn't
that, so.
these two storms. I just happened to be going by. My husband saw it another time because I, live near the area. My mom
Okay.
does, and I'm over there all the time. And
Sure. All right. Thank you for that additional input.
So, Mayor Pro Tem,
Please.
to address the topic, the 6 to 8 calculations that was the measurement interval that we had in front of us. What many people said is a story that I've heard repeated over and over and over again. In the span of half an hour, 45 minutes, water came up and water went down very quickly. Again, we have theories on this. Our running theory is that the intensity of this storm was such that it dropped a lot of water very fast and caused a surcharge. As soon as the storm let up, you saw the system catch up, and then it all dispersed and then pulled with it the water that had surcharged into people's basements. So I've heard the story more than once that it was the whole thing start to finish. It was half an hour, it was 45 minutes. It was wild. It came in fast and left just as fast. That is one of those X factors that we don't have. That we continue to try to find out why and how that happened. So that is one of those areas that we question it ourselves why that's happened and why it's going on. So I don't want to sound like I have the answer for that just yet for you.
No, because I think we need to continue to question that because
Yes.
I just have a hard time believing that we just got that much rain and it popped up in people's yards and then 20 minutes later it just disappeared. I just have a real hard time thinking that is the only thing that happened.
I understand, yes.
Yeah, that's right. And we're again one of those where it grew right up, and then eventually it seemed like it took a lot longer than a half an hour for us for the sewage to disperse. But so again, the timing again, the notion of restrictor plates and reservoirs and things like that. Is there anything else we can comment on tonight with the rapid use of restrictor plates as appropriate?
Is there anything?
If you just admitted that it came in that fast, it was an overwhelming storm, that to me seems like the simplest solution for a short term. I believe all the grades are made at Jordan Iron Works. If DPW could try to walk around every single plate we have, has that name on it, I'm sure you could call and order them.
We certainly can do that, and we're more than willing to do that as a project to just replace those out.
It seems great, but then we have the gentleman who I believe was on Gardner, and
I know.
his road's flooding every time
I
he's
know.
afraid to park on the street. We have to also address that end of it too. So it is a great, and again, we're frustrated too, guys. We feel your frustration, and this is the first step in this. So we are listening to everything you're saying because it's going to be micro pieces put together that's going to be our best solution. So I appreciate what you're saying, but we have to look at the flip side of all those situations too, to make sure we are trying to put together the best package and not just the quickest to have an answer to get out to you.
And to Mr. Rumler's point, you know, and I apologize, Mr. Canty, we do need to study this. I know that's you railed against that. We do need to study this, but our GIS mapping and the work that we're doing with SAW helps us build out a map to know where those restricted covers are and where they aren't, and how that correlated to storm flows and things like that. So that's one of those in-progress items. We want to know more about where those are, how they impact the system as a total, and it all boils down to Mr. Rumler's capacity issue. So that's, as Roland was talking about earlier, I think we're taking the right steps, but we got it's an incredibly intense storm, and we need to know how much water fell, and we need to know what our system is able to take in.
And why it was so rapid. There is an X factor we can't seem to explain that we also need to keep looking into.
For 1 second, I want to clarify that it didn't start and finish all in a half hour. That would have been awesome in
some places it
comparison.
did, though.
I meant
In
from
some areas
the
it
moment
did.
it started to rain, not crazy hard rain, but the moment it started to rain until we started to flood was only like 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah, that's
Then it
what I keep
continued
hearing.
to go for another hour.
And then it
half
just
or so.
disappeared.
And then it just disappeared.
Sorry, you've been very patient. Please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Derek. I live on Princeton, and there's been a lot of focus on like what went wrong, but being on Princeton, I was unaffected. The whole southeast corner of Berkeley was unaffected, and I'd like to know what went right in that area, so maybe we can apply that elsewhere in the city.
So would we.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'd love to continue that as well. So
Thank you.
I put an amen on that because the way that works, X factors aside, there's going to be a lot of things to study with that. Please.
Hi, Rachel on Oxford. So I didn't experience any backup or flooding in my house. I was in the quadrant of Berkeley that didn't have that. However, Matt, you had asked for rain gauge information. So we have a rain gauge in our backyard.
What'd you get?
And we got 4 to 5 inches in that rain gauge.
Are you serious?
Yes. Because and the reason I know this, I didn't look at the rain gauge, my husband did. When you put out that notice that said 2 inches in 2 hours, whatever that notice said, my husband said, that's crazy, our rain gauge read 4 to 5 inches of rain, Rachel, we got. I don't know where Matt's getting his numbers from. So, and that's where we're at, and we experienced no problem, and most of that side of Berkeley didn't have, according to your map,
Yeah.
didn't have a problem.
Our system was not built to handle 4 inches of rain. To the gentleman who wants to know what went right, I can't explain why we did not have flooding if you received that much rain.
So I just want to let you know that
That's 14 numbers.
that's what we had on that side of Berkeley, and I'm right smack dab in the middle of that quadrant. So, you know.
You're right connected to the main drain.
Yeah, so I'm on Oxford, which I just learned, but I learned that is where the main drain goes right down Oxford.
So we did, like I said, we did all the same cleaning, televising. I mean, I don't know, put that in the X factor category. I don't know how we handled 4 inches of rain without the same kind of problems we didn't see 3 years ago. That's an X factor.
Well, it's just, I think it's really important, and it doesn't make any sense why all the people, I realize you say the system runs sort of diagonal through Berkeley, right? That's what you said?
From an elevation standpoint.
Yeah, from an elevation standpoint. But we're at the end. I mean, I'm essentially at the end of that quadrant, right? So why didn't that quadrant where I live get backups like the beginning kind of the beginning, right, for Berkeley? That doesn't make any sense.
I have the same question. That's again,
So-
where we keep coming back to, there's a X factor here that why it happened in one place and what happened in the other. That's why I continue to say, I'm checking in with residents, letting them know what we do know, but at the same time, letting you know what we don't know. If we took 4 inches of rain in the southwest corner and didn't flood, it is, whatever deity is looking over that area could be the X factor. But other than that, we need to know from a scientific standpoint how we handled that much water and did not have the same
So
issues.
the other thing I think you guys should answer, which I think you know the answer to, and somebody asked it, is why the surrounding communities, Southfield, Oak Park, Huntington Woods, Royal Oak, they did not experience, this rain. Now, maybe in some parts it didn't rain at all, like Rackham Golf Course, I heard. However, Southfield it rained, I'm sure. Oak Park, just across the 11 Mile, it rained. Why did it all just hit Berkley? I'm sorry, something's not right. And I'm not trying to blame Berkley in this case. I seriously think this is a much deeper issue, and it leads back to the Water Commission. Sorry, guys, but something's not right.
I watched this happen on radar. I'm going to tip my hat a little bit. I used to do, I'm in automotive. I released a rain sensor for automobiles, auto wiping. So I had to chase storms and know how they flow so I could do my validation. So I watched it. I was on my way to Livonia, and I got involved in it on my way back. We had a north to south traveling storm, and you had a macro squall that came over this western portion of our city, okay? And it inundated that area much quicker than the eastern portions. And so, with that kind of explanation, you guys are, and the system almost is off the hook because it's not built to handle 4+ inches of rain, okay? However, if you got a macro squall coming up like this, and it could happen, the distribution of rain could have happened much more uneven than that, okay? Because everybody in their mind thinks, well, it's raining. We have an equal distribution of rain amongst all the surrounding cities, and that just isn't the case. Back in the in 2014, there was a huge tsunami event of rain that came across all of these areas, and so it was all inundated at the same time. But we had this north to south traveling macro squall, and I almost was taking some screenshots of it with my phone, but I was driving. So I was safe.
We're glad you were safe. Thank you, sir.
Well done.
So, thank you. That's very insightful. Maybe we can follow up with some of that stuff.
And I think it's important
Please.
for whoever's left here.
Hold on.
Can you put the map back up?
But I'm gonna go. I have to go because amongst other things, I haven't been to the bathroom in 3 hours.
Talk about a flow.
I hope that's on the record, sir, yeah.
The thing is that if the system can't handle a macro squall at 4 inches, then just put down cover plates on everything, and you're locking it down. You're protecting yourself already. The short term is like, tell me how much it costs. How much each one of us has to cost, to relieve us of the PTSD, to get these darn covers on our things, so we have known controlled flow rates can go into the system. Maybe you can quantify later how much the system can outflow, but control how much can possibly come into it. All right, you can do that. It's simple math. 100 grates times that many square inches equals a maximum permissible flow rate.
Thank you. We've duly noted. We'll give you a chance to take care of business there. Did
Jerry,
you?
which slide would you like to see come up?
I think she wanted to see the map.
Because I want to show you where I'm at and why I don't want to show you, I don't know why, but why that property did not have any rain. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, back up.
Mr. Pro Tem, with your permission?
Just for a moment, we still have more topics that were already surfaced that we'd like to cover, but as we're approaching the 10 o'clock, so we'll need that motion in a minute here.
I'll just quickly then.
Yeah, so there.
So,
Yeah.
So just so the
So
lower
there.
right side, I'm smack dab in the middle.
yeah.
Well, right by the main drain.
And I think that they did an overlay too with the rainfall versus the basin backups. We kind of did our own, and what the rainfall data from NOAA shows is that the heaviest rain fell in this area.
I have
Okay.
4 to 5 inches. I'm smack dab in the middle.
Right.
In my rain gauge.
I'll go to the next thing here. Okay, so not to reopen old wounds, but in 2011, you guys had about 40 or 50 basements backed up, and it was smaller, probably wasn't as many, so it maybe didn't get enough attention. People don't remember it, and it was right in this corner.
Yep.
and we did the same radar map, and this is where it rained the hardest, and this is where the basement's backed up. This is where in 2011. In 2011. You didn't have a problem there? Okay, good.
Yeah, it's good to be right on.
Problem any of the years, I'm just telling you, well, other than my backyard floods, and I
Sure.
have a French drain, so they're useless.
Thank you.
I can't explain that. I don't think anybody sitting in this room right now will be able to explain how that section took 4 inches of water.
I think that in that section, we didn't get as much rain as the rest of the city of Berkeley, because that is not true. We got just as much rain.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, a couple more topics. So we talked about the grading issue, local ditch. The book, someone asked about the cameras and the footage, if you will, of the pipes and things like that. Yeah, we have somebody who's looking for a new cable channel on their package, I think, at home. So, Derek, could you comment on the availability of that, please? And then we'll hear from...
Sure, I mean, we're happy to pull those videos, so if somebody wants to email me directly and give me a little bit of time, I can pull a video for them and have them come in and take a look.
Okay, or work through the city manager's office, whatever's convenient.
Sure.
Mr. Pest, I've received a couple emails from you. I think you have my contact info. We can set that up.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a response for any of those. So.
Great. Welcome to the response.
Okay, and then the question about the power failures, obviously we will see what we can do to follow up with DT. Yes, did you have a comment real quick?
I just wanted to make a comment. My name is Jackie Parker. I live at 3084 Kenmore. I am on the east side of the street. I am 3 houses south of the library wall parking lot.
Okay.
You wanted to know about rain gauges. I have 2 in my backyard. I also have 2 bird baths, both of which were overflowing. My rain gauge is 5 inches. It was overflowing. I could watch it from the bathroom window. So when I heard 2 inches in 2 hours, I went, no, that's not right at all.
Your set came in much
But
faster, too?
I did not get any water in my basement. Not this time, not last time. And if there's a hill in Berkeley, I live on it. And you actually can see it. If you're driving south on Coolidge, you can see how it goes up and you can see how it goes down. And because I back up to Coolidge, I experienced that same hill.
Yeah.
And in the last storm in 14, you could tell because none of my neighbors got water, but then all the trash was out as you started going towards 12 Mile and Catalpa. Because I can remember when my son was young, he would love to skateboard down the street because it had that incline and he could just coast. And so I think that maybe topography plays a big role in the city and where your house may be sitting.
Right.
And someone who mentioned about having the new build behind and getting all that runoff. That's happened several times in Berkeley in different areas. I know on Kenmore, on the north side of 12 Mile, that's happened over there when people have regraded in their yards and then the next door neighbor gets all the rainwater. So it's something that's really very important with these new builds because they're putting 9-foot basements in. And so they have to come up in order to be able to go down. And that can affect the surrounding areas behind, next, on either side.
Right.
But I think that, you know,
Yeah,
that's...
that topology is key. And speaking of things that need to come up before we go down this, we need to make if we want to continue past 10.
That's fine. I just wanted to say that, you know, I think that might be why.
Okay, if you could repeat the motion, please.
I make a motion that we suspend the rules.
Thank you for your time. A motion was made, motion was supported. Do we need a roll call vote, or can we do, yes, roll call vote, please, to suspend and continue?
Graveline?
Yes.
Kadeco?
Yes.
Stedman? Yes. Turbrack?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Now we can continue.
All right, thanks. Now we can officially continue the conversation here. Appreciate you making the motion there. So we had questions about how do we know the full impact, right? And as you mentioned, these dots, can you again alliterate where these inputs came from, and do we think it's representative, or are there more out there?
Well, both, actually. We believe that the data pattern is representative of where our storm issues were. The sources here are self-reporting through phone calls, through emails, and also this was trash as it was picked up by DPW in the days after the flood event were also logged and put onto this map. So Again, we think we have enough data to show where our high incident areas were, but it is by no means considered to be a comprehensive listing of all households.
Right, so
And we
this
would
is-
still put the word out. Let us know. If you haven't put something in yet, let us know so we can continue to fill this out.
Yep, thank you. Did you have an additional comment?
Yeah, I'm up here to follow up just because the gentleman asked me to before he left. Councilman Starren, if that's...
Is there city attorney?
City attorney.
City attorney. I appreciate you responding to my question about PA 222, but unfortunately you basically just repeated exactly what's on the sheet and on the website. We need help. Maybe if you can provide us with cases of successful litigation against an insurance company, some kind of example that those of us that need to utilize this can use for our own defense, because otherwise you're just telling us what we already have in front of us and that's on the website, and it's really not that much. And you can see there's a lot of people in the audience that could be affected by that. I get it, you're a lawyer, you can't self-incriminate the city.
Please keep in mind, I'm the city's attorney. I can't very well advise people how to sue the city and then defend the city.
It's not
after
suing the
you
city,
sue
it's
them.
filing a claim against your insurance company, right?
I understand,
that
sir,
should,
but not to be, at the risk of sounding glib, when you have a problem with your car, you
Sure.
go to a mechanic. When you have a medical problem, you see a doctor. When you have a legal problem, you need to go see a lawyer.
So you're suggesting we get a class action suit against the city?
I'm
Is
not
that?
suggesting anything, but that's certainly one of your options.
Well, I think it would behoove
The first step, though, is to file a claim. That's by law.
Sure. No, I think
But where you go
Yep.
with that, you'll need to seek your own private legal counsel.
Okay, that's fair. City council then, I think it would behoove the community then for you to provide some kind of resources for us, because it's clear that a lot of people here are out thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, and we need assistance. So if that's suing the city over insurance claims that will likely be rejected, that's maybe one thing. But if you can provide us a slush fund or think creatively here, because I appreciate everyone's consideration about fixing the problem in the long term, but there's people that are probably going into short-term bankruptcy over this kind of stuff, right? They're not able to pay their credit card bills because they have $10,000 of remediation that they have to do in their house. So I would ask that you guys, while I understand and respect the legal position that you have to take, there are some immediate concerns that need to be addressed here financially for people. So we don't have the answer here, obviously, but maybe that's something that you guys can present, and I apologize, but not blow it off. Next time, maybe talk a little bit more substantively about what people can do to recover short-term financial losses, of which there's obviously a significant amount in the audience.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so as I'm looking through the list of the different themes, I think we covered the main ones. Are there any other, Darshell or Matt, things that you had listed that we didn't cover yet tonight? I know this certainly isn't satisfying to many of us. We've scratched the surface on a couple of these items. We have many questions and things yet to continue to research in the days and weeks ahead here, but it feels like we've covered some of these, at least to surface them so that we can better understand them. One of the questions again, Matt, if we could come back to what we did and what we learned from the 2014 event.
So 2014, what it sent us down the track of was trying to look at, what we've done since was, again, we went through our entire SAW process, we went through the mapping process, we tried to get better data about the scope and capacity of our system, both the scope of our system, the cleanliness, and the overall health. If there was any segments of pipe that need to be replaced or relined or things like that, that's one some of the things that we've done since. What we will continue to do now moving forward, and what you heard our engineer talk about earlier, was study the capacity of our system. And that's, I think, is really the threshold to getting into some of these other items that we presented before you, where we need to make capital changes, or if we need to go above the standards, if we need to expand beyond what we currently have, if we can increase. We know instead of meeting a standard, we start talking about increasing the level of service. Instead of hitting a minimum, we talk about how do we protect against the worlds that we're fearful of. So roundabout way of putting a lot of information quickly. We knew we needed to know more about what our system could do and what it couldn't do before we got down the process of changing it in any way. And then, like I said, it's in and out of that system, it's cleaning it, it's televising it, it's relining it, it's increasing the funding for that program. All the things that we can do to improve and optimize our existing pipes. Short answer of what we've done since 14 and lessons that we learned.
Thank you very much. That's very good.
Sorry, that was fast.
That's all right. Good job.
Thank you again. Okay, I know not all of our questions are fully answered. I know we may even have additional questions coming out of tonight. This is not the end of this dialogue. There's certainly a recipe, a menu of short-term and long-term things that we can and should do and consider here as we move forward. So I wanted to thank, again, I'll close with our gratitude as we opened. Thank you, especially to those who were able to stay with us tonight. I know this has been a lengthy conversation, a very important conversation, very emotional conversation, and I appreciate the way in which this has been discussed, framed, and positioning us as a community to understand more of what we want to do together as ways to move forward with these kinds of things. Any other comments here before we take a motion to bring tonight's event to a close?
I just want to again plug Rain Event 2017 for those that utilize email. We continue to take questions in that way. It's not the only source, but it is sort of the hub of where we're taking a lot of this information and how we're building these slides and how we'll build future presentations as well.
Thank you. So if you could repeat that one more time and then also list the website where folks can go for more
Sure.
information.
Rain Event 2017 at Berkley, Mich. This section, the slide here, is the way that we're sort of trying to compile all of the data moving forward. So,
Great.
Of course, City Hall's doors are always open. We'd love to talk to you. But again, as we collect data, it's a great central location. And I likewise would like to thank people that stuck it out. A lot of people asked questions and then walked out and didn't listen to the answers. So grateful to people that made it and stayed and tried to get as much information as possible. Eternally grateful.
Great. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn tonight's special meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Move. Okay, we have a motion that's been made by Councilman Kadeco with support from Councilman Blanchard. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Kadeco?
Yes.
Stedman? Yes. Turbrack?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Gravlin?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes. Thank you. The September 7th, 2017 special council meeting is now adjourned. Thank you again.